The stagecoach rattled into Red Hollow on a Tuesday afternoon, wheels grinding through dust that hadn't seen rain in 6 weeks. Lena Hartwell stepped down onto the wooden platform with one worn leather bag and a spine that refused to bend despite everything the city had taken from her. She was 32, not old, but not young enough to pretend she had unlimited chances left. Martha Brennan spotted her first from the general store window, flour-dusted hands frozen mid-scoop. "Lord have mercy," she breathed, loud enough for 3 customers to crowd beside her. "That's William Hartwell's daughter. Thought she swore she'd never come back." Lena had sworn exactly that. 8 years ago, standing in this same spot with a train ticket to Chicago and dreams that felt solid as iron. She was going to make something of herself, build a life that mattered, return triumphant, if she returned at all. The city had other plans. 2 failed businesses, one spectacular betrayal by a business partner who'd been sleeping with her fiancé. A string of debts that followed her like shadows until there was nowhere left to run except backward. She walked down Main Street with her head up anyway. The town looked smaller than she remembered, or maybe she'd just gotten tired enough that nothing impressed her anymore. Same weathered storefronts, same judgmental faces peering through windows, same suffocating sense that everyone knew everyone else's business before they'd finished thinking it themselves. Her father's old house sat at the edge of town, exactly as she'd left it. He'd been dead 3 years now. A lawyer in Denver had sent word, but the property remained hers. Empty, waiting, like a trap she'd walked right into. Lena Hartwell. The voice came from behind her, rough as gravel. She turned to find Dale Mercer leaning against a post, hat tilted back, smile sharp. "Heard you were making a fortune out east. Funny how you ended up back here instead." Dale hadn't changed. Same swagger, same mean streak hidden under charm that fooled people exactly once. "Heard you were minding your own business," Lena said. "Guess we both heard wrong." His smile hardened. "Town like this, everyone's business is everyone's business. You remember how it works." She did. That was the problem. The first week back, Lena kept to herself. Cleaned her father's house room by room, scrubbing away years of neglect and memories she didn't want to face. Swept out ghost stories, burned old letters, tried not to think about how completely she'd failed at the one thing she'd promised herself, never ending up here again. The town watched. They always watched. "She's broke!" Martha Brennan announced at the Sunday social, voice carrying across tables laden with pies and judgment. "Heard she lost everything in some scandal. Business partner ran off with her money and her man." "That's what comes from getting too big for your britches," Agnes Fletcher added, needles clicking as she worked on yet another blanket for yet another grandchild. "Always thought she was too good for Red Hollow. Now look." Lena heard the whispers, pretended she didn't. What she hadn't expected was how much the town itself had calcified in her absence. The same people saying the same things, the same rigid ideas about who deserved respect and who didn't, the same brutal hierarchy where men like Dale Mercer stood at the top and men like Ethan Vale's going to be at the dance Friday, Sarah Cunningham mentioned during one of those awful courtesy visits women made when someone returned from failure. "You remember Ethan, don't you?" Lena had a vague memory. Quiet kid. Worked on his family's ranch outside town. Maybe. Still single. Sarah's eyebrows lifted meaningfully. "I mean, I know you're probably not interested, but..." "Why wouldn't she be interested?" Martha cut in. She'd invited herself along, as she always did. "Oh, right. Because Ethan's, well, he's nice enough, I suppose." The pause said everything. "Nice how?" Lena asked, mostly because she was tired of guessing at subtext. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "He's just gentle, sweet. Not really the type most women look for out here." "Meaning?" "Meaning he's not exactly a man's man," Martha said bluntly. "Good worker, don't get me wrong. But there's a reason he's 34 and still alone. Women want someone who can protect them. Be strong. Ethan's more like, I don't know, a puppy dog." Lena had spent 8 years surrounded by men who talked loud, took up space, made promises they never intended to keep. Men who performed strength like a stage show while running their business into the ground and stealing from their partners. A puppy dog sounded just fine. She went to the dance anyway. Not because she wanted to meet Ethan Vale, though she was curious now, but because sitting alone in her father's house was slowly driving her insane. The community hall blazed with lamplight and noise. Fiddle music tangled with laughter and stomping boots. Dale Mercer held court near the punch bowl, surrounded by admirers who laughed at jokes that weren't funny. The Brennan boys argued about cattle prices. Young couples spun across the floor with the reckless energy of people who still believed the world made sense. Lena found a corner and watched. "You look like you're at a funeral." She turned. The man beside her was tall, lean, with work-roughened hands and eyes that seemed permanently tired. Not defeated tired, just weary of something she couldn't name. "Maybe I am," Lena said, mourning my better judgment. His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "That makes two of us." "Ethan Vale?" she guessed. He blinked. "How'd you sit? People talk." She paused. "Apparently you're not man enough for Red Hollow's standards." Most men would have gotten defensive, puffed up, made excuses, or tried to prove otherwise. Ethan just nodded. "Yeah, that's the general consensus." His honesty knocked her off balance. "Doesn't that bother you?" "Used to." He watched the dancers without expression. "Now it mostly just is." Something about that, the resignation without bitterness, the acceptance without surrender, caught her attention. "You're not going to try to convince me they're wrong? Are you asking me to convince you?" "No." "Then why would I waste the breath?" She almost laughed. Fair point. They stood in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable, just two people who'd learned that words didn't fix much. "You want to dance?" Ethan asked eventually. Lena glanced at the floor. Half the town was already watching them. If she said yes, the gossip would start before they finished the first turn. "Sure," she said. His hand was calloused when he took hers. His lead was steady, but not forceful. He left room for her to move, to choose her own steps. He didn't try to sweep her into some grand performance, didn't hold her too close or make assumptions. It was just a dance. But the room noticed anyway. "Well," Martha Brennan said loudly enough to carry, "I suppose birds of a feather flock together." Lena felt Ethan's shoulders tense. "People talk a lot here," she said quietly. "Yeah." "Does it ever stop?" "No." His voice was flat. "But you learn to stop listening." She wasn't sure she believed that. The tightness in his jaw suggested he'd never quite mastered the trick. When the music ended, he stepped back immediately. No lingering, no pushing for another dance or trying to extend the moment. "Thanks," he said. "For what?" "Dancing with me anyway?" The phrasing bothered her. Anyway. Like he expected rejection by default, like he'd already internalized every dismissive comment this town had ever made. "You're a good dancer," Lena said. Ethan's expression flickered, surprised, then something cautious, like he wasn't sure whether to trust the compliment. "You don't have to." "I don't have to do anything." She met his eyes. "I'm saying you're a good dancer because it's true. If I thought you weren't, I wouldn't have wasted my time." That almost smile again. Barely there. Hard to argue with that. "Then don't." They parted ways without ceremony. Lena returned to her corner. Ethan disappeared outside, probably to check on his horse or escape the scrutiny or both. But something had shifted. Small. Barely noticeable. Enough. Over the next few weeks, Lena started putting her life back together with the methodical determination of someone who'd run out of alternatives. She took work where she could find it. Bookkeeping for the general store, sewing repairs, tutoring the Fletcher children in mathematics. Nothing glamorous. Nothing that would erase the debt still hanging over her head. But it was something. She saw Ethan around town occasionally. Brief nods. Polite acknowledgement. He never tried to push conversation, never presumed familiarity based on one dance. The town, however, had decided there was a story. "Saw Lena talking to Ethan again yesterday," Sarah Cunningham mentioned at the sewing circle. "Poor thing. She must be really desperate." "It's sad," Agnes agreed. "She could have had her pick of men before she left. Now she's settling for someone nobody else wants." Lena, who was delivering finished alterations, set the bundle down with more force than necessary. "I'm standing right here." The room went quiet. "We didn't mean," Sarah started. "Yes, you did." Lena's voice was level. You meant exactly what you said. You just didn't expect me to call you on it. Martha Brennan looked up from her embroidery. We're just concerned, dear. Ethan's a nice boy, but he's not equipped to take care of a woman, especially not one with your situation. My situation? Your debts, your history. You need someone strong, someone who can provide real security. Lena smiled without warmth. Like Dale Mercer? Dale's a successful rancher, Martha said defensively. He's respected. He's a bully who cheats at cards and still lives off his father's money at 38. Lena picked up her empty basket. But sure, real strong, real secure. She walked out before anyone could respond. The thing was, she hadn't even been thinking about Ethan romantically. One dance didn't mean anything. A few polite conversations didn't constitute courtship. But the town's immediate dismissal of him, the casual cruelty of their assumptions, lit something in her chest that felt dangerously like defiance. She found herself watching for him after that, noticing things. How he always helped Mrs. Chen carry her groceries without being asked. How he fixed the broken step outside the church on his own time, no fanfare. How he worked his ranch from dawn to dusk without complaint, building something solid through sheer, stubborn consistency. How he never, ever bragged. In Chicago, Lena had been surrounded by men who talked endlessly about their plans, their visions, their inevitable success. Men who performed confidence while their actual work crumbled behind the scenes. Ethan just did things, quietly, competently, without needing applause. It was disorienting. One afternoon in late September, Lena's wagon wheel broke 3 miles outside town on the road back from delivering sewing to a ranch family. She stood there staring at the splintered wood, mentally calculating how long the walk would take, whether she could make it before dark, what she'd do if she couldn't. Hoofbeats approached. Ethan pulled his horse to a stop, took one look at the wheel, and dismounted. You okay? Fine, just stuck. He examined the damage with the practical focus of someone who'd solved problems like this 100 times. Can't fix it here. I can give you a ride back to town. Come get the wagon tomorrow with proper tools. Pride wanted her to refuse. Practicality won. That'd be helpful, thanks. He helped her up onto his horse, his hands steady, impersonal, careful not to presume anything, then swung up behind her. They rode in silence for a while, the sunset painting the scrubland in shades of copper and gold. Why'd you come back? Ethan asked eventually. Lena considered lying, decided she was too tired. Ran out of places to run. That honest or that bitter? Both. His chest moved against her back, a silent laugh. Fair. What about you? She asked. You ever think about leaving? Every day for about 10 years. Why didn't you? Ranch needs running. Ma needed help before she passed. Dad after that. He paused. And honestly, I'm not sure anywhere else would be different. Small town, big city, people are people. They decide who you are, and once that's set, it doesn't much matter what you do. Lena thought about Chicago, the backstabbing, the betrayals, the same hierarchies dressed up in different clothes. Yeah, she said quietly. You might be right. They reached town as twilight settled. Ethan helped her down outside her house with the same careful distance, like he was afraid of overstepping some invisible line. Thanks for the rescue, Lena said. Just happened to be riding that direction. She knew it was a lie. That road didn't lead anywhere he needed to go. But calling him on it felt cruel, so she just nodded. Ethan, she said as he turned to leave. He looked back. People in this town are idiots. His expression shuddered immediately. You don't have to. I'm not being kind. I'm being accurate. She held his gaze. They wouldn't know real strength if it carried their groceries and fixed their church steps. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Something moved behind his eyes. Surprise, confusion, maybe the beginning of hope he didn't want to feel. Careful, he said finally, voice rough. That almost sounded like a compliment. It was. Why? The question caught her off guard. Why what? Why bother? You just got back. You don't owe me anything. The town's already decided I'm not worth much. Easier to just agree with them. Move on. Lena understood then, really understood, how deep the damage went. How many years of dismissal had carved into him. How exhausting it must be to keep showing up when everyone expected him to fail. I spent 8 years with men who performed strength, she said. They talked big, made promises, looked good on paper, and every single one of them folded when it mattered. She stepped closer. You don't perform anything, Ethan. You just are. And that's worth more than this whole damn town put together. His jaw worked like he was trying to find words and couldn't. I should go, he said instead. Yeah. But neither of them moved. Lena, don't. She shook her head. Don't warn me off or try to protect me from whatever you think associating with you will cost. I'm a grown woman. I make my own choices, and I'm choosing to see you clearly instead of through their lens. That's going to make your life harder. My life's already hard. At least this way it's hard for something that matters. He left then, but the air between them felt different. Charged. Like they'd crossed some threshold without meaning to, and there was no graceful way back. The town noticed, of course. Within days, the whispers evolved into open speculation. Lena and Ethan. Ethan and Lena. Was something happening? How desperate was she? How deluded was he? Dale Mercer cornered her outside the general store one afternoon, smile sharp. Heard you're spending time with Vale. Heard you care about things that aren't your business? Lena replied, just friendly concern. His eyes said otherwise. Ethan's a good enough worker, but he's not cut out for, well, taking care of a woman. You know that, right? He's not strong enough, not in the ways that count. Lena felt her temper, already frayed from weeks of this nonsense, snap. And you are? Compared to him? Absolutely. Then why are you 38, single, and still proving yourself to a town that already thinks you're important? She smiled sweetly. Seems like real strength wouldn't need this much validation. His expression went cold. You're making a mistake. Probably, but it's mine to make. She walked away before he could respond, heart pounding with the satisfaction of finally saying what she'd wanted to say for weeks. That night, Ethan showed up at her door with her repaired wagon. Didn't have to bring it all the way here, Lena said, surprised. Had time. He shifted his weight. Heard you had words with Dale. News travels fast. It does when Dale makes sure everyone hears his version. Ethan's expression was unreadable. He's not wrong, you know, about me. About which part? Not being strong enough, not being what women want, not being... He stopped, frustrated. I'm not him. I'm not Dale or the Brennan boys or any of the men this town respects. I don't swagger. I don't fight. I don't make big claims, and that matters out here. People need someone who can protect them. Who can... Ethan. Lena stepped outside, closing the door behind her. Do you want to know what I need? He went quiet. I need someone who shows up when they say they will, who does the work without needing applause, who listens instead of talking over me, who doesn't perform manhood like a circus act. She moved closer. I need someone real, and I haven't met anyone more real than you since I got back to this godforsaken town. You don't know me well enough to say that. Then let me know you better. The words hung between them, heavier than she'd intended. Ethan looked at her like she was speaking a language he'd never learned. Why? Because I want to. That's not... He ran a hand through his hair, struggling. Lena, people are already talking. If you... It's going to get worse. They're going to say you settled, that you couldn't do better, that I'm not enough for someone like you. And they're not going to stop. Let them talk. Easy to say now, harder to live with. She thought about Chicago, the betrayals, the whispers, the way failure had followed her like a shadow until she'd stopped trying to outrun it. I've already lived through worse, she said quietly. I survived business partners stealing everything I built, a fiancé who slept with my colleague while planning our wedding, debt collectors who didn't care about excuses. I came back here because I had nowhere else to go. She met his eyes. If I can survive all that, I can survive some gossip from people whose opinions I stopped valuing years ago. Ethan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. You really mean that? Yes. You're sure? Ethan, I haven't been sure about anything in years, but I'm sure about this. I'd rather take a chance on someone genuine who everyone underestimates than waste another second on men who look good on paper and crumble under pressure. He studied her face like he was searching for the lie, the trap, the inevitable disappointment. Whatever he saw there made something in him shift. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Okay, let me know you better." A pause. "Fair warning, I'm not interesting. I work a ranch. I read sometimes. I'm not good at parties or dancing or... You're a fine dancer." That almost smile again. "You said that already." Bears repeating. The silence that followed felt different than before. Less careful. More possible. "You want to come by the ranch sometime?" Ethan asked. "See where I work? What I do? Decide if boring suits you." Lena smiled. "When? Sunday? After church if you go, or just afternoon if you don't." "I'll be there." He nodded, something close to relief crossing his face. Then he mounted his horse and rode off into the gathering dark, leaving Lena standing in her doorway with the strange, unfamiliar sensation of having chosen something, someone, for herself instead of settling for what was left. Sunday came cold and bright. Lena wore her practical dress, the one that could handle dirt and work, and rode out to Ethan's ranch with a basket of bread she'd baked that morning. Not as a gesture of courtship exactly, just as courtesy. Or maybe as proof that she could still make something worthwhile even when everything else had fallen apart. The ranch sat in a valley between low hills, modest but well-maintained. Fences straight, buildings sound, livestock healthy. Everything spoke of consistent effort rather than grand ambition, the kind of work that didn't make headlines but kept things running year after year. Ethan met her at the gate, looking uncomfortable in clean clothes that weren't quite nice enough for church but too good for regular work. "You made it," he said. "Said I would." "Yeah, but..." He stopped himself. "Sorry. Not used to people following through." That hurt more than it should have. Lena spent the afternoon learning the rhythms of his life, watched him check fence lines with careful attention, helped feed horses that clearly trusted him, listened to him explain irrigation problems with the quiet competence of someone who'd solved them through trial and error rather than inherited knowledge. He didn't try to impress her, didn't exaggerate his successes or hide his failures. When a gate stuck, he fixed it without cursing. When she asked about his plans for expansion, he said honestly that he was focused on maintaining what he had rather than overextending. It was the opposite of every man she'd known in Chicago. They ate lunch on his porch. Simple food, easy conversation. He asked about her life in the city without prying. She asked about growing up in Red Hollow without judgment. The silences between topics felt comfortable rather than awkward. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said eventually. "Sure. Why haven't you fought back against what people say about you?" Ethan set down his coffee cup, considering. "What would that look like?" "I don't know. Defending yourself? Proving them wrong." "How?" He met her eyes. "Start fights to show I'm tough? Brag about myself to seem confident? Perform whatever version of manhood they'd accept?" He shook his head. "I tried that when I was younger, tried to be louder, harder, more like what they wanted. Just made me feel like I was lying to everyone, including myself." "So you gave up?" "No, I stopped lying." His voice was quiet but firm. "I decided to just be who I am, work hard, treat people decently, build something real, and let that speak for itself. If people choose not to see it, that's their limitation, not mine." Lena felt something click into place. "That's not weakness." "Town thinks it is?" "The town's wrong." Ethan's expression was complicated, equal parts gratitude and disbelief. "You keep saying things like that." "Because they're true, or because you want them to be." She leaned forward. "Ethan, I spent 8 years around men who performed strength. I watched my business partner swagger and charm and promise while embezzling funds. I watched my fiancé act protective and supportive while sleeping with my colleague. I watched investors talk about vision and integrity while demanding I compromise both." She held his gaze. "Every single one of them looked strong according to how this world measures it, and every single one of them was hollow underneath. And you think I'm different?" "I think you're the only person I've met in years who's exactly who they appear to be. No performance, no pretense, just steady, honest work." She paused. "That's not common, Ethan. And it's not worth less just because it's quiet." He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Vulnerability mixed with hope, mixed with fear, like he wanted to believe her but had been disappointed too many times to trust it. "Stay for dinner," he'd said finally. It wasn't quite a question. Okay, Lena answered anyway. They cooked together in his small kitchen, movements gradually sinking as they worked. He told her about his mother's recipes. She told him about learning to cook in a Chicago boarding house where the stove only worked half the time. They laughed at small disasters, burned edges, oversalted stew, without the tension that usually came with imperfection. It felt easy, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. As the sun set and lamps were lit, Lena realized she hadn't thought about her debts, or her failures, or the town's judgment once all afternoon. She just existed, here, with him. It was terrifying how good that felt. I should head back before full dark, she said eventually, though she didn't move. Probably smart. Neither of them stood. Lena, Ethan said quietly. If we do this, whatever this is, it's going to get harder before it gets easier. The town's already decided you're settling. They're going to pity you, maybe mock you, definitely question your judgment. I know. And I can't promise I can protect you from that. I'm not the kind of man who can make them respect me through force or intimidation. I don't know how to be that person. She reached across the table, took his hand. His fingers were rough with calluses, warm and solid. I don't want that person. I want you. You don't know what you're asking for. Yes, I do. She squeezed his hand. I'm asking for someone real, someone honest, someone who shows up. That's you, Ethan. That's exactly you. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, the gesture almost unconscious. What if I disappoint you? What if you don't? The question seemed to catch him off guard. They sat there in the lamplight, hands joined across a simple table, and Lena felt the weight of possibilities settling over them both. Not the giddy romance of first attraction, something steadier, more consequential, like standing at the edge of a cliff and choosing to jump anyway. When she finally rode back to town, the moon was high, and the air was cold, and her chest felt full of something she didn't quite have words for yet. Hope, maybe. Or just the radical idea that she might finally be choosing right. The town, predictably, lost its mind. By Wednesday, everyone knew Lena had spent a full day and evening at Ethan's ranch. The implications spread like wildfire. She was desperate. He was delusional. They were both making a mistake that would end in inevitable disaster. Martha Brennan stopped Lena outside the general store with an expression of performative concern. Dear, we need to talk about Ethan Vale. No, we don't. You're making a decision that could affect the rest of your life. Someone needs to give you the facts. The facts according to you? Martha's smile tightened. The facts according to everyone who's known him his whole life. Ethan is a sweet boy, but he's not equipped to be a husband. He's too passive, too gentle. He won't stand up for you when it matters. And in a place like this, that's a death sentence. Lena looked at her evenly. Or maybe he just doesn't perform masculinity the way you expect, and you've mistaken that for weakness. That's naive. Is it? Because from where I stand, the so-called strong men in this town spend most of their time bullying people smaller than them and calling it leadership. She stepped closer. Ethan doesn't need to prove himself to me or anyone else. He just lives his life with integrity. That's more than I can say for most of Red Hollow. She walked away, leaving Martha sputtering, but the confrontations kept coming. Sarah, Agnes, even the minister's wife, all convinced they were saving her from a terrible mistake. What bothered Lena most wasn't the criticism, it was the absolute certainty behind it. The way an entire town had decided who Ethan was and refused to see anything else. The way they'd built a cage of expectations around him and then blamed him for not breaking free. She understood that cage, had lived in a different version of it, knew how exhausting it was to keep fighting against definitions other people forced on you. The difference was, she'd run. Ethan had stayed, and somehow, impossibly, he'd managed to hold on to himself anyway. That night she walked to his ranch instead of riding. Needed time to think, to decide if she was really ready for what choosing him would mean, because it wasn't just about them anymore. It was about defying every social rule Red Hollow lived by, about standing beside someone the town had written off and daring them to be wrong, about believing that strength could look different than they'd all been taught. Ethan was fixing a fence when she arrived, working by moonlight because the work needed doing regardless of the hour. He looked up, surprised. Everything okay? Yeah. Lena watched him work for a moment. Town's in an uproar about us. Figured they would be. Doesn't bother you? Bothers me that it bothers you. She stepped closer. It doesn't. Not the way they think it should. A pause. I came here to tell you something. He set down his tools, gave her his full attention. I'm listening. I've spent my whole life trying to meet other people's expectations. My father wanted me educated and proper. The city wanted me ambitious and ruthless. My business partner wanted me compliant and easily manipulated. She met his eyes. I'm tired of being what other people need. I want to be with someone who likes who I actually am. Ethan was very still. And I think you do, Lena continued. I think you see me clearly. The failures and the stubbornness and the debt and the bad decisions, and you're not trying to fix or change any of it. You just accept it. Because there's nothing to fix, he said quietly. You're already... He stopped, struggling with words. You're already enough, Lena. More than enough. Her throat tightened. So are you. The town doesn't think so. Fuck the town. He blinked, then laughed. A real laugh, startled and genuine. That's not very ladylike. I stopped being ladylike around the time my fiancé chose my business partner over me. She smiled. Propriety is overrated. They stood in comfortable silence, listening to the wind move through grass and the distant sounds of livestock settling for the night. What do we do now? Ethan asked. Lena considered. We could keep seeing each other quietly. Let people assume what they want. Stay under the radar. Could. Or, she took a breath. Or we could stop pretending this is anything other than what it is. Stop giving the town's opinion more weight than our own judgment. That's going to make things harder. Everything worthwhile is hard. Ethan looked at her like he was memorizing her face. You're sure? I'm terrified, Lena admitted. I've made so many wrong choices, trusted the wrong people, believed the wrong promises, and every instinct I have says I should protect myself, play it safe, not risk getting hurt again. But every instinct I had in Chicago was wrong, so maybe I should try trusting the opposite. She stepped closer. Maybe I should try trusting you. Something broke in his expression. Relief and disbelief, and something that looked dangerously like love. I won't let you down, he said. I know. And she did. Not because he promised, but because everything about him, the steady work, the quiet integrity, the way he showed up without fanfare, proved it daily. They stood there under the stars, and Lena felt the weight of her choice settling over her like a cloak. Heavy, but right. Marry me, she said. Ethan froze. What? Marry me. The words came easier the second time. Not eventually. Not someday. Soon. Before I lose my nerve or the town talks me out of it, or we find reasons to wait. Lena, I know it's fast. I know it's probably crazy. But I'm 32 years old and I've wasted enough time on people who looked good on paper and turned out to be hollow. She held his gaze. I want something real. I want you. And I don't want to wait for permission from people who've already decided we're wrong for each other. Ethan looked stunned. You're serious? Completely. The town's going to lose its mind. Let them. He studied her face, searching for doubt. Finding none seemed to shake him more than anything else. Yes, he said finally, voice rough. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. A pause. On one condition. Her heart dropped. What? You promise me that if you change your mind, if you wake up and realize this was a mistake, you'll tell me. You won't stay out of obligation or pride or... Ethan, she took his hands. I'm not going to change my mind. You can't know that. Neither can you. But we're choosing to try anyway. That's what this is. She squeezed his fingers. I promise if something changes, I'll tell you. But right now, in this moment, I want this. I want you. And I'm not waiting for the world to give me permission. He pulled her close then, arms wrapping around her with a steadiness that felt like coming home. They stood there in the moonlight, holding on to each other and the impossible choice they'd just made, while Red Hollow slept on, unaware that everything was about to change. The engagement lasted exactly 4 days before Red Hollow turned it into a spectacle. Lena woke that first morning with the weight of her decision sitting in her chest. Not regret exactly, but the full understanding of what she'd set in motion. She'd proposed to a man the town had written off, chosen someone they'd all agreed wasn't enough, and now she'd have to watch them process that choice with all the subtlety of a cattle stampede. She wasn't wrong. By noon, Martha Brennan had organized what she called a concerned women's gathering at the community hall. Lena wasn't invited, but Sarah Cunningham, who had enough decency to feel guilty about it, stopped by to warn her. "They're going to try to talk you out of it," Sarah said, fidgeting with her basket handle. "Martha's convinced you're making a mistake. She's got Agnes and the minister's wife and half the women in town ready to stage an intervention." An intervention? Lena set down her sewing. "For getting engaged." "For getting engaged to Ethan." Sarah's voice dropped. "You know how people are. They think you could do better. Better than a man who shows up when he says he will and treats me with respect. Better than someone who won't fight for you when things get hard." Sarah looked genuinely distressed. "I'm not saying I agree, Lena. I'm just telling you what they're saying. They think he's too soft, that he won't protect you, that you're going to end up disappointed and trapped." Lena felt the familiar anger rising. Did anyone ask Ethan if he's too soft? Or did they just decide that because he doesn't swagger around picking fights? It's not about picking fights. It's about... Sarah struggled. "Out here, women need men who can handle trouble, who can stand up to threats. Ethan's never been that kind of man. Maybe because there are different kinds of strength. Maybe." Sarah didn't sound convinced. "But the kind that matters in Red Hollow is the kind that keeps you alive. And I don't know if quiet determination counts when someone's threatening your land or your livestock or your family." Lena understood the fear behind the words. The frontier wasn't forgiving. People needed partners who could handle danger, scarcity, violence. In that context, Ethan's gentleness looked like liability, but she'd seen enough perform toughness to know it often crumbled under real pressure. "Tell Martha I appreciate her concern," Lena said carefully, "but my decision stands." Sarah nodded, relief and worry mixing in her expression. "Just be careful, okay? Once you marry him, there's no going back. And if it doesn't work out, the town's not going to be sympathetic." After she left, Lena sat in the quiet of her father's house and let herself feel the full weight of doubt. Not about Ethan. She was surprisingly certain about him, but about her own judgment. She'd been so wrong before. About her business partner, her fiancé, her entire life plan. What if this was just another mistake dressed up as courage? She was still wrestling with that question when someone knocked. She opened the door to find Ethan standing there, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable. "You heard," she said. "Whole town's heard." He shifted his weight. "Came to give you an out." Her stomach dropped. "You're changing your mind?" "No, but you should be allowed to." He met her eyes. "I know what people are saying, that you're settling, that I'm not enough, that you're going to regret this." His jaw tightened. "And maybe they're right. Maybe I can't be what you need. So if you want to call this off before it goes any further, I'll understand." Lena stared at him. "You rode all the way here to tell me I should leave you? I rode here to give you a choice without pressure." "The choice without pressure was 4 days ago. I already made it. You made it before the town weighed in." "The town doesn't get a vote, Ethan." He looked down at his hat, turning it in his hands. "They're not completely wrong, you know. I'm not Dale Mercer. I'm not going to shoot anyone who looks at you wrong or beat someone senseless for disrespecting you. That's not who I am. I don't want you to be. But you might need me to be." His voice was quiet but firm. "Something happens. Rustlers, drought, someone tries to take advantage, and I might not handle it the way a stronger man would." Lena stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "You think strength is about violence?" "I think survival sometimes requires it." "And you think you're not capable?" He was silent for a long moment. "I don't know. I've never had to find out. Maybe that makes me weak. Maybe it makes me lucky. But either way, you deserve someone you can count on when things get bad." "I can count on you." "You don't know that. Neither do you." She moved closer. "Ethan, you're so busy assuming you'll fail that you can't see what you've already done. You've run a ranch alone since your father died. You've survived droughts and harsh winters and all the same challenges everyone else faces. You've done it without bragging or asking for help or expecting applause. That's not weakness. It's not strength either, not the kind that matters. Who decides what kind matters? She was getting frustrated now. Dale Mercer, Martha Brennan, people who've never had to prove themselves beyond performing the right kind of toughness? People who've lived here long enough to know what works. Or people who've lived here so long they can't imagine anything different. Lena caught his hand. I'm not from here, Ethan. I've seen other places, other kinds of men. And I'm telling you, the loud, aggressive ones aren't automatically better. They're just louder. He looked at their joined hands like he didn't quite trust the connection. What if you're wrong? Then I'm wrong. But I'd rather fail trying something real than succeed at something hollow. A muscle worked in his jaw. You're stubborn. Yes. And you're not going to change your mind. No. He exhaled slowly, something that might have been relief or resignation or both. Okay. Okay? Okay. We do this. He squeezed her hand. But Lena, when it gets hard, and it will get hard, you tell me. You don't just suffer through because you're too proud to admit this was a mistake. Same goes for you. That almost smile. Deal. They set the wedding for the following Saturday. Not because they needed time to plan, neither wanted anything elaborate, but because waiting longer felt like giving the town ammunition, like they were uncertain, ashamed. The minister, Reverend Thomas, looked pained when Ethan asked him to perform the ceremony. Son, I have to ask, are you sure about this? Ethan's expression went carefully blank. Yes, sir. Because marriage is a serious commitment, and there are concerns about whether you're ready for that kind of responsibility. Concerns from who? Reverend Thomas shifted uncomfortably. The community has your best interests at heart. They worry that Miss Hartwell might be. He stopped, clearly struggling with how to phrase it delicately. That she's desperate and I'm deluded? Ethan's voice was flat. That's not what I said, but it's what you meant. Ethan stood. Will you perform the ceremony or not? The Reverend sighed. I will, but I'm also going to pray you both know what you're doing. Appreciate it, Ethan said without inflection, and left. Lena had her own gauntlet to run. The women's intervention happened Wednesday afternoon, ambushing her at the general store with what Martha called loving honesty. We care about you, dear, Martha began, surrounded by a chorus of nodding heads. And we can't stand by while you make a decision that could ruin your life. My life's already been ruined, Lena said. This is me trying to rebuild it. With Ethan Vale. Agnes Fletcher's needles clicked disapprovingly. Lena, be realistic. The man can barely run his own ranch. How's he going to support a wife? His ranch runs fine. For now. But what happens when real trouble comes? When you need a man who can handle threats, not just avoid them? Lena felt her patience fraying. Has Ethan ever failed to handle trouble? The women exchanged glances. Well, no, Sarah admitted, but he's never been tested. Not really. And when he is, I'll be there beside him. That's what marriage means. Martha's expression hardened. You're being naive. Frontier life doesn't forgive weakness. And Ethan is weak, whether you want to admit it or not. He's gentle. That's different. Not out here, it isn't. Martha leaned forward. I've lived in Red Hollow 40 years. I've seen what happens to women who marry soft men. They end up doing all the hard work themselves, making all the difficult decisions, carrying burdens they shouldn't have to carry. Is that what you want? I want a partner. Not a performance. Then you're going to be disappointed. Agnes set down her knitting, looking almost sad. Ethan's a sweet boy, but he's not husband material. And the sooner you accept that, the less it'll hurt when you realize we were right. Lena stood, her chair scraping loudly in the sudden silence. You know what I've realized? That this town is so afraid of anything different that it can't recognize value when it's standing right in front of you. She looked at each woman in turn. Ethan Vale has more integrity in his little finger than most men in Red Hollow have in their entire bodies. And if you can't see that, that's your failure, not his. She walked out before anyone could respond, but the confrontation shook her more than she wanted to admit. Not because she doubted Ethan, exactly, but because their certainty was so absolute, so unified. What if they knew something she didn't? What if her judgment really was that compromised? She found herself at Ethan's ranch that evening without consciously deciding to go there. He was working in the barn, and something about the steady rhythm of his movements, efficient, unhurried, focused, settled her nerves. He looked up when she entered. "You okay?" "Had a visit from the concerned citizens of Red Hollow." "Ah." He set down the bridle he'd been mending. "How bad?" "They think I'm making the biggest mistake of my life." "What do you think?" Lena sat on a hay bale, suddenly exhausted. "I think I'm tired of everyone else's certainty. I spent 8 years in Chicago, surrounded by people who knew exactly what I should do. Invest here, partner with him, trust this person. Every single one of them was wrong." She looked at him. "Now I'm back here, and everyone's just as certain. And I don't know how to tell the difference between wisdom and groupthink." Ethan crossed to sit beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You want the truth?" "Always." "They might be right. About me." He held up a hand when she started to protest. "Not because I'm weak, but because I'm untested. I've never had to prove I can protect someone. Never had to face down real danger. And maybe when that moment comes, I'll fail. Maybe I'll freeze or run or make the wrong call. I don't know. Nobody knows until it happens. But most men have at least proven they're capable. I haven't even done that." Lena turned to face him fully. "You've proven you show up every day. You've proven you work hard without supervision. You've proven you treat people with kindness even when they don't deserve it. You've proven you keep your word." She paused. "Those things matter, Ethan. Maybe not to Red Hollow, but they matter to me." His expression was complicated, gratitude and doubt tangled together. What if it's not enough? What if it is? They sat in the dusty quiet of the barn, surrounded by the smell of hay and leather, and the sounds of horses settling for the night. The lamplight threw soft shadows across the worn wood. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the roof. "I'm scared," Ethan admitted quietly. "Of what?" "Of disappointing you, of proving them right, of—" He stopped, struggling. "Of you waking up 6 months from now and realizing you settled for someone who wasn't worth the trouble." Lena took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "And I'm scared that I'm making another catastrophic judgment error, that my track record is so bad I can't trust my own instincts, that I'm going to drag you into my mess and ruin your life." So we're both terrified. Completely. He laughed, the sound rough but genuine. "Hell of a foundation for a marriage. Better than false confidence." "Is it?" "I think so." She squeezed his hand. "At least we're being honest. That's more than I can say for my last engagement." They stayed like that until full dark, holding on to each other and their shared fear, finding strange comfort in admitting they had no idea what they were doing. The days before the wedding passed in a blur of preparation and increasing hostility. Dale Mercer made a point of cornering Ethan outside the blacksmith shop, voice loud enough to carry. "Heard you're actually going through with it," Dale said, smile sharp. "Marrying Lena Hartwell." "That's the plan." "Bold move for someone in your position." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And what position is that?" "Come on, Vale. We both know she's settling. Woman like that, educated, been to the city. She could have her pick. But she comes back broke and desperate, and suddenly you look good enough." Dale stepped closer. "Question is, how long before she realizes her mistake?" "That's between me and her." "Is it? Because when it falls apart, and it will fall apart, the whole town's going to have to deal with the aftermath." Dale's expression hardened. "You're making her look pathetic, Ethan, and you're making yourself look delusional. Do everyone a favor and walk away before this gets worse." Ethan stood very still, hands clenched at his sides. Everything in him wanted to swing, to prove he could, to show Dale and everyone watching that he wasn't as weak as they thought. But violence wouldn't prove anything except that he could be provoked. And he'd spent too many years learning self-control to throw it away on Dale Mercer's ego. "I'm marrying her Saturday," Ethan said evenly. "You can attend or not. Either way, it's happening." He walked away while Dale was still sputtering, heart pounding with suppressed rage. Lena had her own confrontation that same day. She was carrying supplies back to her house when she found her path blocked by 3 women, Martha, Agnes, and Caroline Webb, the doctor's wife. "One last chance," Martha said without preamble. "Call this off now before you embarrass yourself further." "Move, please." We're trying to help you, Lena. Can't you see that? Caroline's voice held genuine concern. My husband's treated Ethan for years. Nice boy, but there's something soft about him. Not quite right. You marry him, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what you could have had. I know exactly what I could have had, Lena said. I had it in Chicago. Loud men who looked good on paper and turned out to be hollow. I'm done with that. So you're choosing the opposite extreme? Agnes shook her head. That's just as foolish, child. There's a middle ground, decent men who are also strong. Why not wait for one of them? Because I don't want to wait. And I don't want middle ground. I want Ethan. Martha's expression turned cold. Then you're more damaged than we thought. That partner of yours really did a number on you, didn't he? Made you so desperate for kindness that you can't tell the difference between a good man and a weak one. The words hit harder than Lena expected, because there was truth in them. She was damaged. Her judgment had been compromised. And maybe she was so starved for basic decency that she'd mistaken it for something more. But then she thought about Ethan's hands, steady and sure when he worked, the way he listened without interrupting, the quiet competence that permeated everything he did, the absolute lack of pretense. You're right, Lena said quietly. I am damaged, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong about this. She pushed past them and kept walking, refusing to let them see how much the interaction had shaken her. Friday night, the night before the wedding, Lena couldn't sleep. She sat in her father's kitchen, staring at the ring Ethan had given her, simple silver, no stone, practical rather than romantic, and tried to quiet the voices in her head, every doubt, every warning, every cruel prediction. A knock startled her. She opened the door to find Ethan standing there, looking as wrecked as she felt. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. Kept thinking about tomorrow, about... He stopped. Can I come in? She stepped aside. They sat at the kitchen table, the single lamp casting long shadows. Neither spoke for a long moment. I'm not going to be what they want, Ethan said finally. I'm never going to be Dale Mercer or the Brennan boys or whoever else this town thinks you should have married. I'm just going to be me. And maybe that's not enough. It's enough for me. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He looked at her, something raw in his expression. What if it stops being true? What if 6 months from now, or a year, you realize they were right? That you needed someone stronger, louder, more capable of whatever it is I'm not? Lena reached across the table, taking both his hands. Then we'll deal with it together. But Ethan, I need you to hear this. I'm not expecting you to be perfect. I'm not expecting you to never fail or struggle or make mistakes. I'm expecting you to be honest, to show up, to try. She paused. That's all. That's enough. That's not what marriage is supposed to be. What's it supposed to be? I don't know. Something more certain, more solid. My last engagement was certain. My business partnership was solid. Both were built on lies. She squeezed his hands. I'll take honest uncertainty over false confidence any day. Ethan's thumb brushed across her knuckles, the gesture becoming familiar. I'm going to disappoint you eventually. Probably. I'm going to disappoint you too. That's what people do. And then what? Then we figure it out, or we don't. But we try first. He was quiet for a long time, searching her face for something she couldn't name. Whatever he found there seemed to ease something in him. Okay, he said. Okay. Okay, we try. He stood, pulling her up with him. Tomorrow morning, community hall. We get married and let the town think whatever they want. You're sure? Terrified, but sure. Lena felt something settle in her chest. Not confidence exactly, but commitment. The decision to jump even when you couldn't see the bottom. Then I'll see you tomorrow, she said. You will. He left, and Lena sat alone in the lamplight, listening to the silence of the house and the hammering of her own heart. Tomorrow she'd marry a man the whole town had written off. Tomorrow she'd choose vulnerability over safety, honesty over performance. Tomorrow she'd either prove everyone wrong or confirm their worst suspicions. Either way, there was no going back. Morning came gray and cold. Lena dressed in her mother's wedding dress, simple cream fabric, slightly yellowed with age but still beautiful. She'd altered it to fit, stitching by lamplight for the past 3 nights, and now she stood looking at herself in the mirror and trying to recognize the woman staring back. She looked older than she'd expected, tired, but there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there in Chicago, a kind of determined clarity. Sarah Cunningham arrived to help with her hair, the only person who'd volunteered. "You look beautiful," Sarah said, voice thick. "You don't have to lie." "I'm not." Sarah met her eyes in the mirror. "I still think you're making a mistake, but you look beautiful anyway." "Thanks, I think." They worked in silence for a while, Sarah's hands deft with pins and ribbon. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said eventually. "Sure." "Do you love him?" Lena considered the question. Did she? Love felt like too big a word for what they had. Too romantic, too certain. But there was something there, respect, trust, a bone-deep certainty that he was exactly who he appeared to be. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I trust him, and right now that feels more important." Sarah's hands stilled. "I hope that's enough." "Me too." "Me?" The community hall looked almost festive despite the town's disapproval. Someone, probably Ethan, had arranged wildflowers in mason jars. The chairs were set up in neat rows. Reverend Thomas stood at the front, expression carefully neutral. The attendance was sparse, a handful of people who'd come out of obligation or curiosity. No family for either of them, no celebration. Just witnesses to a decision most of them thought was catastrophic. Lena waited in the back room, heart hammering. This was it. The point of no return. She could still walk away, save face, admit the town was right. But then she thought about Ethan's steady hands, his quiet competence, the way he'd never once tried to change her or fix her or make her into something she wasn't. The door opened. Sarah poked her head in. "They're ready." Lena took a breath, smoothed her mother's dress, stepped into the hallway. And there was Ethan, standing at the front of the hall in his best suit, threadbare at the elbows but clean and pressed, looking absolutely terrified. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Not romance, not passion, but understanding, recognition. Two people standing on the edge of a cliff and choosing to jump together. Lena walked down the aisle alone. No one to give her away, no procession, just her decision, carried on her own feet. When she reached Ethan, he took her hands. His fingers trembled slightly. "You came," he whispered. "Of course I came." "I thought, I'm here. So are you. That's what matters." Reverend Thomas cleared his throat and began the ceremony. The words washed over Lena without really landing. Something about commitment and partnership and choosing each other. All true. All insufficient for what they were actually doing. Then came the vows. "Do you, Ethan Vale, take Lena Hartwell to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Ethan's voice was quiet but steady. "I do." "And do you, Lena Hartwell, take Ethan Vale to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Every eye in the room watched her, waited for her to come to her senses, to realize her mistake. Lena looked at Ethan, this man the town had decided wasn't enough, and felt absolutely certain. "I do." The words landed like stones in still water, final, irreversible. Reverend Thomas pronounced them married with the enthusiasm of someone officiating a funeral. "You may kiss the bride." Ethan hesitated, clearly unsure. Lena leaned in and kissed him first. Brief, chaste, sealed. Done. They turned to face the sparse crowd as husband and wife, and the silence was deafening. No applause, no celebration, just a handful of people witnessing what they all believed was a mistake. Martha Brennan's expression was pinched with disapproval. Dale Mercer had shown up after all, standing in the back with his arms crossed and a smirk that said he was already counting down to their failure. Even Sarah looked sad, like she was mourning something that hadn't died yet. Ethan's hand tightened around Lena's. She squeezed back. They walked down the aisle together, past the judgment and pity and certainty that they were wrong, out into the cold morning air where their breath misted and the wind bit through fabric. Ethan's wagon waited. They decided to skip any reception, there was no one to celebrate with anyway, and head straight to his ranch, their ranch now. He helped her up, his touch careful, then climbed up beside her. The reins settled in his hands with practiced ease. "Well," he said, "we did it." "We did. No going back now." "No." He looked at her, something vulnerable in his expression. You regret it yet? Lena considered lying, offering reassurance, but they'd promised honesty. I'm scared, she admitted, but no, not yet. That's something. Yeah. They rode in silence, leaving Red Hollow behind. The town would talk, predict their failure, wait eagerly for confirmation that they'd been right all along. Let them wait, Lena thought. Let them talk. She'd made her choice. Ethan had made his, and whatever came next, success or failure, triumph or disaster, it would be theirs. The ranch appeared over the rise, modest and solid against the gray sky. Home now, for better or worse. Ethan stopped the wagon in front of the house. Neither moved. We should probably go inside, Lena said. Yeah. Still, neither moved. The weight of what they'd done pressed down on them both. Married, bound together. All the town's expectations and predictions following them like shadows. Ethan, Lena said quietly. Yeah? Whatever happens tonight, whatever the town thinks is supposed to happen, I just need you to know that I don't have expectations about anything. We can take this as slow as we need. Figure things out. There's no... Lena. He turned to face her. I know. We'll figure it out together. Okay. They climbed down from the wagon and walked into the house side by side, closing the door on Red Hollow's judgment and stepping into the unknown territory of what they'd chosen. The rest of the world could wait. For now, there was just this. Two people, terrified and uncertain, committed to trying anyway. It would have to be enough. Inside, the house felt smaller than Lena remembered. The main room served as kitchen and sitting area both, with a fireplace that had seen better days and furniture that was functional rather than comfortable. Through the doorway, she could see the bedroom, a simple space with a bed that suddenly seemed enormous and terrifying. Ethan set her bag down, then stood there like he didn't know what to do with his hands. I'll make coffee, he said finally. Okay. They moved around each other with the awkwardness of strangers sharing space, even though they'd spent hours together over the past weeks. Marriage changed things, made every gesture weighted with meaning, every silence loaded with expectation. Lena sat at the table and watched Ethan work. His movements were efficient, practiced, filling the pot, stoking the fire, measuring grounds. He'd done this 1,000 times alone. Now she was here, and everything felt different. We don't have to talk about it, Ethan said without turning around. About what? Tonight. What's supposed to happen? I want you to know there's no pressure. We can take things slow, sleep in separate rooms if you want, whatever you need. Lena felt something in her chest loosen. You've been worrying about this. Since you proposed, yeah. He glanced back at her. Didn't want you to think I expected, we barely know each other, and just because we're married doesn't mean... Ethan? He stopped. Come sit down. He brought 2 cups of coffee and sat across from her, hands wrapped around the warm ceramic like he needed something to hold on to. I've been worrying too, Lena admitted, about what you'd expect, what I'm supposed to do. How to be a wife when I've never been good at meeting expectations. You don't have to meet mine. What are yours? He considered the question seriously. Honesty, mostly. If something's wrong, tell me. If you need space, say so. If you regret this whole thing, don't pretend you don't. He paused. I'd rather know the truth and deal with it than live with lies. Even if the truth is hard? Especially then. Lena wrapped her hands around her own cup, letting the warmth seep into her palms. My fiancé in Chicago lied for 8 months, told me everything was fine while he emptied our business accounts and slept with my partner. When I finally found out, he said he was protecting me, saving me from worry. She met Ethan's eyes. I don't want protection from the truth. I want the truth, even when it hurts. Then that's what you'll get. They drank their coffee in silence, not uncomfortable exactly, just waited with everything they weren't saying. As the afternoon faded into evening, they fell into an uneasy routine. Ethan showed Lena where things were kept, dishes, linens, supplies. She started to make dinner while he tended the animals. They moved around each other carefully, learning the rhythms of shared space. Dinner was simple. Beans and cornbread, nothing fancy. They ate without much conversation, exhaustion settling over them both. The wedding had been brief, but the weeks leading up to it had drained them. After the dishes were cleaned and put away, they stood in the main room and faced the reality they'd been avoiding all day: the bedroom. "I can sleep out here," Ethan said, "on the floor or in the barn. Whatever makes you comfortable." Lena looked at him, this man who'd just married her, who'd committed to building a life together, and who was now offering to sleep in the barn on their wedding night to avoid making her uncomfortable. "That's ridiculous," she said. "I don't want to pressure—" "Ethan, we're married. We can share a bed without—" She stopped, feeling heat rise in her face. "We can just sleep, like adults. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that." He looked uncertain. "You sure?" "No. But I'm also not sure about most things right now, and we're doing them anyway." That got a small smile. "Fair point." They prepared for bed in careful silence. Lena changed in the bedroom while Ethan stayed in the main room. When she emerged in her nightgown, modest, practical, he went in to change. The whole dance felt absurd, but neither knew how else to navigate it. Finally, they both stood on opposite sides of the bed, staring at it like it might bite. "This is stupid," Lena said. "Yeah, we're being stupid. Completely." She climbed in first, staying close to the edge. Ethan followed, maintaining a careful distance. There was at least a foot of space between them, a chasm that felt both necessary and ridiculous. Ethan blew out the lamp. Darkness settled over them like a blanket. Lena lay there, hyper-aware of every sound. Ethan's breathing. The creak of the bed when either of them shifted. The wind outside rattling the windows. Her own heartbeat, too loud in her ears. "You asleep?" Ethan asked quietly. "No. Me neither." Silence stretched between them. "This is our wedding night," Lena said, "and we're lying here like strangers. We kind of are strangers. We're married strangers. Doesn't make us less strange." She laughed despite herself, the sound breaking the tension. "No, I guess it doesn't." More silence, but it felt different now, less weighted. "Lena?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad you're here, even if this is awkward as hell." She felt something warm unfold in her chest. "Me too." "You think it gets easier?" "I hope so. Otherwise, we're in for a long life of sleeping a foot apart and making terrible small talk." His laugh was quiet, but genuine. "That'd be pretty sad. Tragic, even." The space between them felt a little less vast. Not gone, they were still carefully separate, but less like a barrier and more like breathing room. "Good night, Lena." "Good night, Ethan." She didn't sleep well. The bed was unfamiliar. The house was full of strange sounds, and her mind wouldn't stop cataloging everything that had changed in the span of a single day. But sometime in the small hours, exhaustion won. She drifted off with Ethan's steady breathing beside her, and the knowledge that tomorrow they'd have to figure out what came next. Morning arrived cold and gray. Lena woke to find Ethan already gone, the space beside her cool. For a moment, panic flared. Had he left? Regretted everything? But then she heard movement in the kitchen. The smell of coffee drifted through the doorway. She dressed quickly and found Ethan making breakfast, still in his work clothes. He must have been up for hours. "Morning," he said without looking up. "Coffee's ready." "Thanks." She poured herself a cup, studying him. He looked tired, uncertain. "You okay?" "Yeah, just—" He gestured vaguely, trying to figure out how this works. "The marriage or the mourning?" "Both." Lena leaned against the counter. "I don't think there's a manual." "Probably not." He finally met her eyes. "Did you sleep okay?" "Not really. You?" "Same." They stood in the kitchen, drinking coffee and navigating the strange new reality of being married, of sharing space, of having to coordinate lives that had been separate until yesterday. "I need to check the fences this morning," Ethan said. "Should take a few hours. You can, I don't know, settle in, make yourself at home, whatever you need. Can I come with you?" He blinked. "To check fences? Unless you'd rather I didn't." "No, it's not interesting, and it's cold, and you don't have to—" "Ethan, I'm going to lose my mind if I sit here alone trying to figure out how to be a wife in a house I don't know. I'd rather be outside doing something useful." He considered this. "Okay, but it's really boring. I spent 3 months doing inventory in a Chicago warehouse. I can handle boring. They rode out together as the sun broke through clouds. Lena bundled in a coat Ethan had found for her. His mother's, he said, which fit well enough. The morning was brutally cold, the kind that bit through fabric and made breath visible. Ethan showed her how to check fence posts for rot, how to spot where wire had come loose, how to make temporary repairs that would hold until spring. It was tedious work, exactly as he'd warned, but there was something meditative about it, something grounding. "This is what you do?" Lena asked as they worked. "Just maintain things?" "Mostly, yeah. Ranch work is 90% maintenance, fixing things before they break completely, keeping ahead of decay." He tested another post. "Not glamorous, but necessary. That's the idea." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of the task creating its own conversation. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said eventually. "Sure. Why didn't you ever leave?" "Really? You said the ranch needed running, but you could have sold it, started over somewhere else. Why stay in a town that treated you like you weren't enough?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, testing another fence post. Partly stubbornness. They wanted me to fail or run, and I didn't want to give them the satisfaction. He moved to the next section. But mostly because leaving felt like admitting they were right. That I wasn't strong enough to handle it here. And I needed to prove, to myself more than them, that I could make it work anyway. "Did you? Prove it to yourself?" "I don't know." He glanced at her. "Some days I think I did. Built something solid, kept it running, didn't need anyone's approval. Other days I think I just got stubborn and dug in, and now I'm stuck in a life I chose out of spite rather than actual desire." Lena understood that feeling. "I stayed in Chicago 2 years longer than I should have for the same reason. Didn't want to admit it wasn't working. Thought leaving meant they'd won." "Did they win?" "They stole everything I built and ruined my reputation, so yeah, probably." She tested a wire, found it solid. "But I learned something too, that proving yourself to people who've already decided you're not worth their time is a waste of energy. Better to just live and let them think whatever they want." That's what I tried to do. And it worked, didn't it? You've got a functioning ranch, you survived. They're still talking, but you're still here. "Yeah, but I'm still alone." He stopped, realizing what he'd said. "Was alone until yesterday." "Until yesterday," Lena agreed. They finished the fence line by midday and headed back to the house. The work had been cold and tedious, but it had also done something important, given them a shared purpose, a reason to exist together beyond the abstract concept of marriage. Over the next few days, they fell into a tentative pattern. Ethan would wake early and handle the morning chores. Lena would make breakfast. They'd work together on whatever needed doing, repairs, cleaning, organizing supplies. Meals were simple and quiet. Evenings, they'd sit by the fire, reading or mending or just existing in the same space. And every night, they'd climb into bed on opposite sides, maintaining that careful distance, and talk in the darkness until sleep claimed them. It wasn't romance, it wasn't passion, but it was something. A foundation being built one awkward conversation at a time. The town, of course, was waiting for failure. When they rode into Red Hollow the following Saturday for supplies, the whispers started immediately. Lena could feel eyes tracking them as they walked from the general store to the feed shop. Conversations would stop when they passed, then resume in hushed tones behind them. Martha Brennan made a point of intercepting them outside the mercantile. "Well," she said, looking between them with sharp interest, "how's married life treating you both?" "Fine," Ethan said flatly. "Really? How nice." Martha's smile was all edges. "You look tired, Lena dear. Everything all right?" The implication was clear. Lena felt anger rise but kept her voice level. "Just adjusting, as you'd expect." Of course. Marriage is such an adjustment, especially when—" She paused delicately. "Well, I'm sure you're both doing your best." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond, just nodded curtly and guided Lena away. "Don't," Lena said quietly as they walked. "Don't what?" "Don't let her get to you. That's what she wants." She was implying, I know what she was implying, and it doesn't matter. But it did matter. Lena could see it in the tension in Ethan's shoulders, the way his hands clenched around the supply list. Martha's insinuations had hit exactly where they were meant to, the fear that he wasn't enough, that their marriage was already failing, that the town's predictions were coming true. They finished their shopping in tense silence and loaded the wagon. As Ethan helped Lena up, Dale Mercer appeared, leaning against a post with studied casualness. "Vale," he said, "heard you're still playing house." Ethan didn't respond, just moved to climb up himself. "Must be hard," Dale continued, voice carrying. "Trying to be a husband when you've never been much of a man. I give it another month before Lena comes to her senses." Ethan froze, one foot on the wagon step. "Don't," Lena said again, quieter this time. But something in Ethan had reached its limit. He turned to face Dale, and Lena saw something dangerous in his expression. Not violence exactly, but a kind of controlled fury she hadn't seen before. "You've been running your mouth for weeks," Ethan said, voice low. "Making predictions about my marriage, about my wife, about things that are none of your business. Just calling it like I see it." "Then you're blind." Ethan stepped closer. "Or maybe you're just so used to performing strength that you can't recognize the real thing. Either way, what happens between me and Lena is ours. Not yours, not the town's. Ours." Dale's smile sharpened. "Big words for someone who's never backed them up." "I don't need to back them up. Not for you." Ethan held his gaze. "I'm done caring what you think. Done proving myself to people who've already decided I'm not worth their time. You want to keep talking? Go ahead, but it doesn't change anything." He turned and climbed into the wagon, taking up the reins with steady hands. Dale looked genuinely thrown, like he'd expected a different response. Anger, maybe, or violence. Not dismissal. Lena settled beside Ethan, heart pounding. "That was stupid," Ethan finished. "I shouldn't have engaged." "No, I was going to say impressive." He glanced at her, surprised. "I didn't hit him." "Exactly. You could have. He was pushing for it. But you didn't give him what he wanted." She paused. "That takes more strength than throwing a punch." Ethan didn't respond, but she saw his hands relax slightly on the reins. They rode back to the ranch in silence, but it felt different than before. Less heavy, like something had shifted. That night, after dinner, Ethan sat by the fire whittling a piece of wood, some repair project he was working on. Lena watched his hands move, precise and patient, and felt the question that had been building for days finally surface. "Ethan?" "Yeah?" "Can I ask you something personal?" His hands stilled. "How personal?" "Very." He set down the wood and knife, giving her his full attention. "Okay." Lena took a breath. "Have you ever, before me, have you been with anyone? Romantically?" The question hung between them. Ethan's expression went carefully neutral. "No," he said finally. "Never? There was someone once, long time ago. Sarah Cunningham's older sister, Mary, before she moved east." He picked up the wood again, not looking at Lena. "We courted for a few months. I thought maybe, but then her father made it clear I wasn't suitable, not established enough, not impressive enough. She married a banker in St. Louis instead." "How long ago?" 12 years. Lena felt something twist in her chest. "And no one since?" "Who would there be? Town already decided I wasn't worth considering. Women want men who can protect them, provide for them, be strong. I'm none of those things according to Red Hollow." He finally looked at her. "You're the first person who's looked at me and seen something other than inadequacy." "That's not true. You are strong. You do provide." "I know what I am, Lena, and I know what I'm not." His voice was quiet but firm. "I'm not ashamed of it. Not anymore. But facts are facts. Until you, no one thought I was worth the trouble. The weight of that, 12 years of loneliness, of being dismissed, of watching everyone else pair off while he remained alone, settled over Lena like a blanket. That's why you kept offering me a way out," she said. "You didn't believe anyone would actually choose you. Can you blame me?" "No." She moved to sit beside him. "But I did choose you. I am choosing you every day." "Why?" The question was so raw, so genuinely confused, that Lena's throat tightened. "Because you're real," she said. "Because you don't lie or perform or pretend to be something you're not. Because you show up and do the work without needing applause. Because—" She stopped. searching for the right words. Because being around you feels like I can finally breathe. Like I don't have to be anyone other than who I actually am. Ethan stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. I don't know how to be what you need, he said quietly. You already are. I'm not. He struggled. Lena, I don't know what I'm doing with any of this. The marriage, the physical side of things, how to be a husband. I'm 34 years old and I've never shared my life with anyone. I don't know the steps. Neither do I. You were engaged. I was engaged to a liar who was sleeping with someone else. That doesn't qualify me as an expert. She touched his hand. We're both figuring this out. That's okay. What if I can't? He stopped, jaw working. What if I'm not capable of being what you need? Not just emotionally, physically. What if, Ethan? She waited until he looked at her. I married you knowing we barely knew each other, knowing the town thought we were making a mistake, knowing we might fail. She laced her fingers through his. I'm not expecting perfection. I'm not even expecting competence. I'm expecting honesty, effort, partnership. Everything else we'll figure out together. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, that gesture that had become familiar. You make it sound simple. It's not, but it's also not as complicated as we're making it. They sat in the firelight, hands joined, and Lena felt something settle between them. Not resolution, exactly, but understanding. They were both carrying fears and doubts and years of damage, both trying to build something new from broken pieces. It would be messy, imperfect, probably painful at times, but it would be theirs. Over the following weeks, they learned each other in increments. Lena discovered that Ethan sang to the horses when he thought no one was listening, off-key but earnest. Ethan learned that Lena talked to herself when she was working through problems, muttering calculations and arguments to empty rooms. They found rhythm in shared tasks and comfort in comfortable silences. The physical distance between them in bed gradually shrank. Not deliberately, just natural erosion. One night, Lena woke shivering and found herself pressed against Ethan's back for warmth. Another night, he reached for her in his sleep, arm coming around her waist. By the third week, they were sleeping tangled together more often than not, though neither acknowledged it in daylight. It felt safer that way, like they could explore closeness in the dark without having to name it. But the town's scrutiny never lessened. Every trip into Red Hollow brought new speculation. Lena looked pale. Was she unhappy? Ethan seemed tense. Was the marriage failing? They weren't affectionate in public. Clearly something was wrong. The constant judgment wore on them both. Maybe we should stop going into town, Ethan said one evening after a particularly brutal encounter with Agnes Fletcher, who'd made pointed comments about the lack of expected developments in their marriage. And let them think they've won? Who cares what they think? You do, Lena said gently. You say you don't, but you do. I can see it. Ethan set down his coffee cup harder than necessary. Fine. Yes. It bothers me. Happy? No, because it shouldn't bother you. They're wrong about you. Are they? He stood, pacing. Maybe they see something I don't. Maybe I really am. Don't you dare finish that sentence. Why not? It's what everyone thinks. Everyone except me. Lena stood too, crossing to him. Ethan, I don't know how many times I have to say this before you believe it. You are enough, exactly as you are. The town's opinion doesn't change that. Your opinion might? The words landed like stones. Lena stared at him, understanding finally clicking into place. This wasn't about the town. It was about her. About when she'd realized they were right. You're waiting for me to leave, she said quietly. Ethan didn't deny it. You think I'm going to wake up one day and see what they see? Decide I made a mistake, walk away. It's what people do. I'm not people. I'm your wife. For now. The casual certainty in those words broke something in Lena. She grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. Listen to me. I married you knowing exactly who you are, knowing every supposed flaw the town loves to catalog, and I chose you anyway. That doesn't change just because they keep saying it should. You don't know what you're asking for. Yes, I do. I'm asking for a partner. Someone real, someone honest. That's you. What if it's not enough? His voice cracked. What if 6 months from now or a year, you realize you need something I can't give? What then? Then we figure it out. But Ethan, you have to stop expecting me to leave. It's like you're trying to prove the town right, and I can't. She stopped, frustrated. I can't compete with the voice in your head that sounds like every person who ever dismissed you. He pulled away, moving to the window. His reflection stared back from the dark glass, shoulders hunched. Mary's father told me I'd never amount to anything, he said quietly. Said I was too soft for frontier life, too weak to protect a wife. That Mary deserved better. He pressed his palm against the window. I was 22, I believed him. Spent the next 12 years trying to prove him wrong while simultaneously believing he was right. Lena came to stand beside him. And now? Now I'm married to someone who claims to see value in me, and I can't make myself believe it. Because what if you're wrong? What if they're all right and you're the only one who doesn't see it? Or what if they're all wrong and I'm the only one who does? He looked at her reflection in the glass. Why would you be right when everyone else is wrong? Because I'm the one who lives with you, who sees how you work, how you think, how you treat people when no one's watching. She met his eyes in the window. They see what they expect. I see what's actually here. And what's here? Someone worth keeping. The words hung between them. Ethan's expression was complicated, wanting to believe, afraid to trust. I'm broken, Lena. So am I. That's not a deal breaker. It should be. Well, it's not. She turned to face him directly. You want to know what would make me leave? Not your supposed weakness, not the town's judgment, not any of the things you're afraid of. She paused. Dishonesty. That's it. If you lied to me, pretended to be something you're not, performed for me the way you refuse to perform for them, that would break us. Everything else we can survive. Ethan studied her face, searching for the lie. Finding none seemed to shake him more than any reassurance could. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Neither do I. That's not reassuring. It's honest. He almost smiled. Fair. They stood in the quiet of the house, the fire burning low, and Lena felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. They were weeks into a marriage and still navigating each other like strangers, still sleeping carefully tangled together without acknowledging it, still terrified of wanting too much or asking for things that might not be given. Something had to give. Ethan, Lena said quietly, come to bed. I will. Just need to bank the fire. No, I mean, she took a breath. Come to bed with me, not just to sleep. He froze. Lena. We're married. We share a bed every night. We're building a life together, but we're still treating each other like we might break, and I'm tired of it. She held his gaze. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for honesty, for trying, for actually being married instead of just performing the idea of it. Ethan looked genuinely terrified. I've never... I know. Neither have I. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. She reached for his hand. We'll figure it out. Together. Like everything else. What if I can't? What if I'm not? Then we'll figure that out too. She squeezed his fingers. But Ethan, I need you to stop waiting for me to realize you're not enough. Because every time you pull away or offer me an escape, you're telling me you don't believe in us. And that's going to break us faster than any supposed inadequacy ever could. His hand tightened around hers. I'm scared. Me too. That's not romantic. No, but it's real. They stood there, hands joined, and Lena felt the moment balance on a knife's edge. They could keep going as they had been, careful, distant, safe. Or they could risk something more, something honest and uncertain and possibly disastrous. Ethan's free hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. The gesture was tentative, questioning. Lena leaned into it, answering without words. He kissed her then, soft, uncertain, nothing like the practiced confidence she'd experienced with her ex-fiancé. Just honest want mixed with genuine fear. She kissed him back, trying to pour everything she couldn't say into the contact. That she meant this. That she chose him. That she wasn't going anywhere. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. I don't want to disappoint you, he whispered. You won't. You can't know that. Then let me find out. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes, and she saw the exact moment he decided to trust her, to trust himself, to jump even when he couldn't see the bottom. "Okay," he said. Lena took his hand and led him to the bedroom, her heart hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. This was it, the threshold they'd been avoiding since the wedding, the moment where they stopped performing marriage and actually tried to live it. The lamp cast soft shadows across the room. Ethan stood by the bed, looking lost. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. "Good thing I don't have expectations then." "That's a lie. Everyone has expectations." "Fine. My expectation is honesty. That's it. Everything else we'll figure out." She moved closer. "Just be here. With me. No performance. No trying to be what you think I want. Just you." He reached for her with trembling hands, and Lena understood that this was harder for him than any confrontation with Dale Mercer or the town's judgment. This was vulnerability stripped bare. This was trust with nothing to hide behind. They came together clumsily, uncertain, all sharp angles and awkward adjustments. Not the smooth confidence of romance novels or the practiced ease of experience. Just two damaged people trying to build something real from broken pieces. Ethan's touch was gentle to the point of hesitance. Lena had to guide his hands, show him what she wanted because he was too afraid of overstepping. When he apologized for the third time, she kissed him to make him stop. "Don't apologize," she whispered against his mouth. "Just feel." "I don't know how." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out." And somehow, in the fumbling uncertainty, they did. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but honestly. Ethan's careful attention, the way he checked in with every touch, the genuine care behind every hesitant caress, it was more real than anything Lena had experienced with someone who'd known exactly what they were doing. When it was over, awkward and imperfect and more emotionally overwhelming than either had expected, they lay tangled together in the darkness, both shaking. "That was," Ethan started. "Terrible," Lena finished. He tensed. "I'm sorry, No, I mean, it wasn't smooth or practiced or anything like what people talk about." She turned to face him. "But it was real and honest, and I wouldn't change it." Ethan looked at her like she'd performed a miracle. "Really? Really?" She touched his face. "We'll get better at it, like everything else. But right now, that was exactly what we needed. No performance, just us." He pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. She felt him trembling, not with cold or fear, but with something that might have been relief, or gratitude, or just the overwhelming reality of being truly seen. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For not expecting me to be someone I'm not." Lena held him tighter. "Thank you for being exactly who you are." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, no distance left between them. And for the first time since the wedding, neither woke shivering or uncertain in the middle of the night. They'd crossed the threshold. Now they just had to figure out what came next. Morning came different. Lena woke to find Ethan already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not regret. She'd been braced for that. Something softer, more uncertain. "Hi," she said. "Hi." His voice was rough with sleep. "You okay?" "Yeah." "You?" "I think so." He paused. Last night was, "If you apologize again, I'm going to hit you with a pillow." That got a small smile. "Wasn't going to apologize, just trying to find the right words." "And?" "Don't have them." He traced a pattern on her shoulder, the touch light. "Everything feels different." It did. The air between them had changed, less careful, more possible, like they'd torn down a wall neither had realized they'd been maintaining. "Different good or different bad?" Lena asked. "Don't know yet." His eyes met hers. "Ask me in a few days when I'm not terrified." "You're terrified?" "Completely." "You?" "Absolutely." They lay there in the early morning light, admitting their fear to each other, and somehow that made it bearable. The next few days unfolded with a strange new intimacy. Not the passionate romance of stories, more like two people learning to exist in the same skin. Ethan would reach for Lena's hand while they worked, then seem surprised he'd done it. Lena would catch herself watching him and have to look away before he noticed. They moved around each other with less careful distance, bumping shoulders in the kitchen, sitting closer by the fire. At night, there was no more careful separation. They came together with less hesitation each time, learning what made the other sigh or tense or laugh. It was still clumsy, still imperfect, but it was theirs, and that mattered more than technique. "We're getting better at this," Lena said one night, breathless and tangled in sheets. Ethan huffed a laugh against her neck. "That's a low bar, but we're clearing it." "Barely." She smacked his shoulder. "Take the compliment." "Yes, ma'am." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and Lena realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this settled. Not happy, exactly. Too much uncertainty for that. But grounded, real, like she'd finally stopped running. The town, predictably, noticed the change. When Lena and Ethan rode into Red Hollow the following Saturday, something in their bearing was different. They stood closer, touched more casually, looked at each other with an ease that hadn't been there before. Martha Brennan saw it immediately, her expression souring. "Well," she said, intercepting them outside the mercantile. "You two seem settled." "We are," Lena said simply. "How nice." Martha's eyes were sharp. "Though I suppose the real test is still coming. Wait until winter hits hard, until money gets tight, until the honeymoon phase wears off, and you're left with reality." "We're already living reality," Ethan said. "This is it." Martha looked between them, clearly searching for cracks. Finding none seemed to irritate her. "We'll see. Marriage is easy when it's new. Give it time." After she walked away, Lena felt Ethan's hand find hers. "She's not going to give up," he said quietly. "Let her waste her energy. We know what we have." "Do we?" Lena looked at him. "Don't you?" He considered the question seriously. "I think so, most days. Other days I still can't believe you haven't left yet." "Ethan, I know, working on it." He squeezed her hand. "But 12 years of being told you're not enough doesn't disappear in a few weeks." She understood. Her own damage ran just as deep. The betrayals, the failures, the voice that still whispered she'd made another catastrophic mistake. But they were fighting it together now, and that made it bearable. They finished their shopping and were loading the wagon when raised voices caught their attention. Down the street, Dale Mercer had cornered young Tommy Chen, Mrs. Chen's teenage son, and was berating him about something. "You think you can just walk away when I'm talking to you?" Dale's voice carried. "Show some respect, boy." Tommy looked terrified, pressed against the storefront. "I didn't mean, you were just being disrespectful, like your mother taught you." Ethan went very still beside Lena. "It's not our business," she said quietly, reading his tension. "He's 16. Dale's twice his size. And if you intervene, Dale will make it about you not being man enough to mind your own business." I don't care what Dale thinks. But she could see he did, could see the calculation happening, get involved and confirm every accusation about being soft, or walk away and confirm accusations about being weak. Before either of them could decide, Dale shoved Tommy. Not hard enough to really hurt, but enough to humiliate. Enough to establish dominance. Ethan moved. Lena grabbed his arm. "Wait, I'm not hitting him, just talking." He pulled free gently and walked toward the confrontation. Dale saw him coming and smiled. "Well, if it isn't Vale." "Come to defend the boy? That's sweet." "Let him go, Dale. Or what? You'll ask me nicely to stop?" Dale laughed. "The kid needs to learn manners. Not my fault his mother can't teach him properly. His mother's a widow trying to raise 3 kids alone. Maybe show some respect yourself." "Respect?" Dale stepped closer to Ethan. "You're going to lecture me about respect? You who convinced a desperate woman to marry you by being pathetic enough to make her feel sorry for you?" Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. "This isn't about me. Leave the kid alone. Make me." The challenge hung in the air. Everyone on the street had stopped to watch. This was the moment they'd all been waiting for. Proof that Ethan was either weak enough to back down or stupid enough to fight Dale Mercer, who outweighed him by 30 pounds and had a reputation for dirty tactics. Ethan looked at Tommy, who was still pressed against the wall, then back at Dale. "No," he said. Dale blinked. "What?" "I'm not going to fight you, that's what you want, an excuse to beat me senseless in front of everyone and prove I'm weak." Ethan's voice was calm, almost conversational. "But I don't need to prove anything to you." Tommy, go home. Your mother's probably worried. Tommy didn't move, frozen between fear and confusion. Now, Ethan said, firmer. The boy bolted. Dale's face flushed with anger. You think you won something? You just proved you're exactly what everyone says. Too soft to handle real conflict. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just smart enough not to let you bait me into a fight that serves no purpose except your ego. Ethan turned to walk away. Dale grabbed his shoulder, spinning him back. Don't walk away from me. Let go. Or what? You'll finally grow a spine? Ethan looked at Dale's hand on his shoulder, then up at Dale's face. I'm asking you nicely. Let go. And if I don't? For a long moment, Ethan just stood there. Lena could see him calculating, weighing options. Then something shifted in his expression, not anger, but decision. He grabbed Dale's wrist with one hand and pressed a specific point near the base of his thumb. Dale's grip went slack immediately, pain flashing across his face. I said let go, Ethan repeated, voice still calm. He released Dale and stepped back. We're done here. This time when he walked away, Dale didn't follow. Just stood there, rubbing his wrist and looking genuinely shocked. Lena met Ethan at the wagon. What was that? Pressure point. My father taught me. He climbed up, hand steady on the reins. Figured it was better than hitting him. You could have just walked away. I tried. He grabbed me. Ethan glanced at her. I defended myself without violence. That still count as being too soft? Lena smiled. That was perfect. Dale doesn't think so. Dale's nursing a bruised wrist and a bruised ego. I'd say you won. They rode out of town with half of Red Hollow staring after them, and Lena could practically hear the conversations that would dominate dinner tables that night. Ethan hadn't fought Dale. Proof he was weak. But he'd also defended himself and Tommy, which complicated the narrative. The town wouldn't know what to do with it. Good. Let them be confused. Back at the ranch, Ethan was quiet as they unloaded supplies. Lena let him work through whatever he was processing, knowing he'd talk when ready. Finally, as they were putting the last of the feed away, he spoke. I wanted to hit him. I know. Would have felt good, proving I could. Probably. Lena leaned against the fence. Why didn't you? Because it wouldn't have proved anything except that I could be provoked. And Dale would have used it. Look at Vale, finally snapping because he can't handle himself like a real man. He shook his head. I'm tired of playing their games. Tired of trying to prove I'm something I'm not. What are you? He looked at her. I'm someone who'd rather find a solution that doesn't involve violence. Someone who thinks walking away takes more strength than throwing punches. Someone who... He stopped. Someone you're not ashamed to be married to, I hope. Lena crossed to him, taking his face in her hands. I have never been ashamed of you, not for a single second. You hear me? The town, can go to hell. She kissed him, quick and fierce. You stood up for Tommy without becoming the thing they wanted you to be. That's not weakness. That's integrity. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. You really believe that? Completely. Even when everyone else thinks I'm wrong? Especially then. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the late afternoon sun. When they finally pulled apart, something in Ethan's expression had shifted. Not confidence exactly, but acceptance. Like he was finally starting to believe what she'd been saying all along. That night, Martha Brennan organized another gathering, this time specifically to discuss the Ethan situation. Word reached Lena through Sarah, who stopped by the ranch with genuine concern. They're calling it an emergency meeting, Sarah said, twisting her hands, about what happened with Dale. Half the town thinks Ethan was right to intervene. The other half thinks he humiliated Dale and caused trouble. Let them meet, Lena said. They're going to make decisions about you, about both of you. What kind of decisions? Sarah looked uncomfortable. Whether you should be included in community events, whether Ethan should be trusted with certain responsibilities, whether your marriage is... She stopped. Whether our marriage is what? Whether it's legitimate, whether you're really committed or just... Sarah's voice dropped. Martha's saying you'll leave once you realize what you've gotten yourself into, that this whole thing is a mistake waiting to collapse. Lena felt anger rise but kept it controlled. Tell Martha we're not going anywhere, and we're not interested in her meetings or her opinions. She's influential, Lena. If she turns the town against you, the town's already against us. Has been since we got engaged. We're still here." Sarah left looking worried, and Lena told Ethan about the meeting that evening. "They're gathering to discuss us," she said. "Like we're a problem to be solved." Ethan didn't look surprised. "They've been doing that since I was 16. Nothing new." "Doesn't it bother you?" "Used to. Now it just feels like background noise." He looked at her. "But if it bothers you, if this is too much, stop offering me a way out. I'm not taking it. Even when the whole town's against us? Especially then." She sat beside him. "We could go to the meeting, defend ourselves. No point. They've already decided what they think. Showing up just gives them ammunition. So we ignore it? We live our lives. Let them waste energy on meetings and gossip while we actually build something real." He took her hand. "They're looking for us to fail, Lena. Best way to prove them wrong is to succeed, quietly, without their permission." She understood the wisdom in that, but part of her wanted to fight, to make them see what they were missing, to force acknowledgement. "I hate that they get to judge us," she admitted. "They don't get to. They just do it anyway. There's a difference." "Feels the same." "I know." He squeezed her hand. "But their judgment only matters if we give it power, and I'm done giving them that." The meeting happened without them. Lena heard about it afterward from Sarah, who reported that the town was split. Some thought Ethan had handled the Dale situation well, showing restraint and intelligence. Others saw it as more evidence of weakness. The debate had gone on for hours with no resolution. "Martha's furious," Sarah said. "She expected everyone to agree Ethan was wrong. Instead, people are questioning her judgment." "Good," Lena said, "but she's not done. She's planning something else. I don't know what, but she's determined to prove you made a mistake." Lena thanked her for the warning and told Ethan that evening. "Let her plan," he said. "We've got work to do." And they did. Winter was coming, which meant preparing the ranch for months of harsh weather. They worked side by side, reinforcing structures, stockpiling supplies, checking every fence line and building for weaknesses. The labor was exhausting but satisfying, tangible progress they could see and touch. During those weeks, something shifted between them. The last traces of awkwardness faded. They moved together with increasing synchronization, anticipating each other's needs without discussion. When Lena lifted something heavy, Ethan was there to help. When Ethan's back ached from a long day, Lena knew to heat water for a bath. They fit together like pieces that had been rough cut but were slowly being sanded smooth. "We're getting good at this," Lena said one evening, watching Ethan stack firewood with efficient precision. "At what?" "Being married." He paused, considering. "Yeah, I guess we are." "You sound surprised." "I am." He set down the last log. "Spent so long convinced I'd be terrible at it. Turns out it's just showing up, being honest, doing the work. That's all anyone can do. Most people make it look more complicated. Most people are performing. We're just living." He crossed to her, pulling her close despite being sweaty from work. "I love that about us." The words hung between them. Not quite a declaration, just an observation, but it felt significant. "What else do you love?" Lena asked. Ethan thought about it. "I love that you don't expect me to be someone I'm not. I love that we can work in silence without it being awkward. I love that you call me on my shit when I'm spiraling." He paused. "I love waking up next to you, even when you steal all the blankets." "I don't steal them. You give them up." "Because you get cold, and you notice that." "Of course I notice." He kissed her forehead. "I notice everything about you." Lena felt something warm unfold in her chest. "I love things about us too." "Yeah, like what?" "I love that you listen when I talk. Really listen, not just wait for your turn to speak. I love that you're teaching me about the ranch like I'm a partner, not just a wife. I love that you never make me feel stupid for not knowing things." She leaned into him. "I love that you're exactly who you said you were. No surprises, no hidden agendas, just you, consistently." "That's boring." "That's trustworthy." They stood in the fading light, holding each other, and Lena realized something that should have terrified her. She was falling in love with him. Not the desperate, grasping love she'd felt in Chicago, the kind that clung because letting go meant admitting failure. This was steadier, deeper, built on a foundation of mutual respect and honest partnership. It was real, and that scared her more than anything the town could say. The first real test came in late November when a section of fence came down during a storm, and half their cattle wandered onto Dale Mercer's property. Ethan discovered it at dawn and came back to the house looking grim. "How bad?" Lena asked. 20 head on Dale's land, maybe more. He'll want compensation, or he'll keep them and claim they were his all along. Ethan sat heavily at the table. "I need to go talk to him. I'm coming with you. Lena, don't argue. I'm coming." They rode to Dale's ranch in tense silence. Lena could see Ethan running scenarios, trying to figure out how to handle this without it escalating. Dale would use this, another chance to humiliate, to prove Ethan couldn't manage his own property. Dale met them at his gate, looking entirely too pleased. Well, lost some cattle, did you?" "Storm took down the north fence," Ethan said evenly. "I'm here to collect them." "Are you now?" Dale crossed his arms. "Seems to me cattle on my land are my cattle." "That's not how property law works." "Maybe, but it's how things work out here." Dale's smile sharpened. "Of course, we could come to an arrangement. You pay me for my trouble, say $50, and I'll let you take your animals back." "That's extortion." "That's business." Dale stepped closer. "Unless you'd rather settle this another way, man to man." There it was, the trap. Pay an unfair price and look weak, or fight and give Dale exactly what he wanted. Ethan stood very still, thinking. Lena could see him working through options, discarding strategies. "I'll give you $10, Ethan said finally. "Fair compensation for the hay they ate and your time rounding them up. That's more than generous." "50 or nothing?" "Then nothing." Ethan turned to Lena. "Get Sheriff Morrison. Tell him Dale's holding our cattle hostage and demanding illegal payment." Dale's expression flickered. "Now wait a minute." "No, you wait." Ethan turned back. "You think I'm too weak to fight you, so you push. But there are other kinds of strength, Dale. Legal recourse, for instance. You want to keep my cattle? Fine. We'll let the law decide who's right. The sheriff's not going to care about a fence dispute. Maybe not, but he'll care about extortion and theft, especially when I file formal complaints." Ethan's voice was calm, almost conversational. "You've been looking for a reason to prove I'm not man enough for this town. Here's your chance. Let's see how your reputation holds up under legal scrutiny." Dale stared at him, clearly thrown. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. Ethan was supposed to either pay or fight, not threaten legal action. "You're bluffing," Dale said. "Try me." For a long moment, they faced each other. Then Dale's expression soured. "Fine, take your damn cattle, but this isn't over, Vale." "It is for me." Ethan walked past him toward the pen where their animals were penned. "Lena, help me get them out." They collected their cattle without further incident, though Dale watched them the entire time with barely contained rage. When they finally got the animals back onto their own property, Lena turned to Ethan. "That was risky." "I know. He could have called your bluff." "Wasn't bluffing. I would have gone to Morrison." Ethan secured the last animal. "I'm tired of letting Dale push me around. Legal recourse isn't as satisfying as punching him, but it's more effective. The town won't see it that way. The town can think whatever they want. We got our cattle back without violence or paying extortion. That's a win in my book." Lena looked at her husband, this man who'd just faced down his biggest bully with nothing but calm logic and legal threats, and felt pride swell in her chest. "You're amazing," she said. Ethan blinked. "I didn't even fight him." "Exactly. You found a better way, a smarter way." She kissed him. "That takes real strength." "Tell that to Red Hollow." "I will. Every chance I get." Nyam. But Red Hollow, as expected, saw things differently. By the time they rode into town the following week, the story had transformed. Ethan had threatened Dale with legal action, proof he couldn't handle disputes like a real man. He'd hidden behind the law instead of standing up for himself. Even retrieving his own cattle was somehow evidence of weakness. Martha Brennan made sure to share this interpretation loudly at the general store. Imagine threatening a lawsuit over a simple disagreement. That's not how frontier men handle things. That's how cowards operate. Lena, who was buying flour, set her bag down with enough force to rattle the counter. You're right, she said loudly. Real men settle everything with violence. That's why Dale's been in 3 fights this year, broken Tom Fletcher's jaw, and has a reputation for starting trouble everywhere he goes. Such admirable masculinity. Martha's face flushed. That's not what I meant. No? Then what did you mean? Because it sounds like you're saying Ethan should have fought Dale instead of using intelligence and legal recourse. Which is interesting, considering you spent months telling me he was too gentle. Now you're upset he proved you right by finding a nonviolent solution? He hid behind the law. He used the law, like a civilized person, unlike Dale, who tried to extort money for cattle that weren't his. Lena picked up her bag. But I suppose actual problem-solving doesn't count as masculine enough for Red Hollow's standards. You'd prefer bloodshed and stupidity. She walked out before Martha could respond, heart pounding with righteous anger. Ethan was waiting by the wagon, having heard enough of the exchange to look both embarrassed and grateful. You didn't have to do that, he said. Yes, I did. I'm tired of them rewriting every situation to confirm their prejudices. She loaded her supplies. You did the smart thing, the right thing, and I'm not letting them turn it into something shameful. They're not going to change their minds. I don't care. I'm not defending you for them. I'm defending you because you're my husband, and you deserve to have someone in your corner. Ethan pulled her close, right there on Main Street, where everyone could see. Thank you. For what? For fighting for us. Even when it'd be easier not to. It's not a fight, it's just the truth. She kissed him, not caring who watched. And the truth is, you're worth defending. They drove home through the cold afternoon, and Lena realized she didn't care anymore what Red Hollow thought. They'd already decided years ago who Ethan was. Nothing he did would change that, but she knew who he was, knew his worth, his strength, his integrity. And that was enough. Winter came hard that year. Snow fell heavy, and temperatures dropped brutal. The ranch demanded constant attention, breaking ice on water troughs, ensuring animals had shelter, keeping fires going. They worked dawn to dusk and fell into bed exhausted. But something about the harsh conditions brought them even closer. When Lena got sick with a fever in December, Ethan nursed her through it with patient care. When he injured his hand fixing the barn roof, she wrapped it and took over his chores without complaint. They learned to rely on each other in ways that went beyond emotional support, actual survival depending on partnership. We make a good team, Ethan said one night, both of them huddled by the fire after a particularly brutal day. We do. Never thought I'd have this. A partner, someone who actually shows up. Lena leaned against him. Never thought I'd find someone worth showing up for. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the wind howl outside. The town might be gossiping about them, predicting their failure, waiting for proof they'd been right all along. But inside this house, in the warmth they'd built together, none of that mattered. They had each other, and they were making it work. One day at a time, one challenge at a time, one moment of honest partnership at a time. The town could wait forever for them to fail. They were too busy succeeding. Spring came late that year, fighting its way through lingering snow and frozen ground. When the thaw finally arrived in March, it brought floods that turned roads to mud and swelled the creek that ran through their property to dangerous levels. Ethan spent 3 days reinforcing the banks and moving livestock to higher ground, coming home exhausted and covered in mud. Lena met him at the door on the 3rd evening, took one look at him, and started heating water for a bath. You don't have to, he started. Get in the tub when it's ready. I'm not sleeping next to someone who smells like swamp. He smiled despite his exhaustion. Yes, ma'am. While he soaked, Lena made a simple dinner and thought about how far they'd come. 6 months married, 6 months of the town predicting failure, 6 months of proving them wrong through nothing more complicated than showing up for each other. It wasn't the grand romance of novels. It was quieter than that, steadier, built on a foundation of mutual respect and honest work rather than passion and promises. And it was real in a way nothing in Lena's life had ever been real before. Ethan emerged from the bath looking half asleep, and they ate in comfortable silence. After dinner, he pulled her close on the old sofa his parents had owned, and they sat watching the fire burn low. I've been thinking, he said quietly. About what we've built here. About us. He paused. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize you made a mistake. But it's been 6 months, and you're still here. Where else would I be? Chicago. Somewhere else. Anywhere that isn't married to the town disappointment. Lena shifted to look at him. Are we really still doing this? After everything? Old habits. He tried to smile. 12 years of believing something doesn't disappear overnight. It's been 6 months. Not overnight. You know what I mean? She did. Damage ran deep and healing took longer than a few seasons. But they were healing. She could see it in small ways. How Ethan stood straighter when they went to town. How his automatic apologies had decreased. How he'd started using we instead of I when talking about the ranch. I'm not leaving, Lena said firmly. Not today, not tomorrow, not when things get hard or when the town says something cruel or when you have moments of doubt. I chose this. I chose you. That doesn't change. What if I'm not enough? What if you already are? He pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. I love you. The words were muffled but clear. Lena felt her breath catch. They danced around it for weeks, shown it in actions, implied it in moments, but neither had said it directly. I love you too, she whispered back. Ethan pulled away enough to look at her, something vulnerable in his expression. Really? Really. Have for a while now. Just didn't know how to say it. Why not? Because loving someone is terrifying, especially when everyone's waiting for you to fail. She touched his face. But I'm done being afraid. I love you. Messy, imperfect, still figuring it out you. All of it. He kissed her then, deep and honest, and they made their way to the bedroom with the easy familiarity of 6 months of practice. It wasn't perfect, never would be, but it was theirs, and that made it better than any polished performance. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Ethan spoke again. What if we had a baby? Lena's eyes flew open. What? Not now, eventually, just, I've been thinking about it, about what comes next, building something that lasts beyond us. You want children? I don't know, maybe? He sounded uncertain. Do you? Lena thought about it. Children had never been part of her plan. In Chicago, she'd been too focused on business. After the betrayal, too focused on survival. But lying here with Ethan, imagining a future that stretched beyond just the two of them, something shifted. Maybe, she said. Eventually. When we're ready. What's ready look like? Not having the whole town waiting for us to fail. Ethan laughed quietly. That might take years. Then we have time. They fell asleep discussing possibilities. Small dreams built on the foundation they'd created. It felt dangerous and hopeful in equal measure. The real turning point came in April, when Dale Mercer's ranch ran into serious trouble. A fire broke out in his barn, and while no one was hurt, he lost significant livestock and equipment. The whole town rallied to help, everyone except Ethan, who heard the news in town and went very quiet. We should help, Lena said on the ride home. Why? Because that's what communities do. Dale spent 6 months trying to humiliate me. Why would I help him? Lena understood the resistance. Dale had been cruel, relentless in his mockery. Helping him now would feel like weakness to the town, proof that Ethan was too soft to hold a grudge. But something in her knew this was important. Because being better than him doesn't mean stooping to his level, she said. It means rising above it. Ethan was silent for a long moment. You really think we should? I think not helping makes us just as small as he is. And we're not small, Ethan. We're better than that. He thought about it all evening, wrestling with pride and principle. Finally, as they were getting ready for bed, he made his decision. We'll go tomorrow, offer whatever help he needs. You're sure? No, but you're right. Being better means acting better, even when they don't deserve it. They rode to Dale's ranch the next morning with supplies, lumber, nails, some extra feed they could spare. Dale met them at the gate, looking exhausted and surprised. What do you want? He asked, not quite hostile, but close. Heard about the fire, Ethan said. Brought some things. Figured you could use help rebuilding. Dale stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. You're helping me. If you'll accept it. Why? I haven't exactly been kind to you. No, you haven't. Ethan climbed down from the wagon. But Lena reminded me that being better doesn't mean being petty. So here we are. You need help or not. For a long moment, Dale just looked at them. Then something in his expression cracked.
Not quite humility, but acknowledgement. Yeah, he said quietly. I could use help. They worked alongside Dale and his hands for 3 days, rebuilding what the fire had destroyed. It was hard, exhausting labor, and the atmosphere was tense at first. But gradually, as they worked, something shifted. Dale stopped posturing, started actually talking instead of performing, even thanked Ethan directly for a suggestion on barn construction. On the 3rd day, as they were finishing up, Dale pulled Ethan aside. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. Ethan blinked. For what? For everything. The things I said about you, about Lena, about your marriage. Dale looked genuinely uncomfortable. I've been a bastard, and you still showed up to help. That says something about you. It says I married someone who's better than I am. Maybe, but you listened to her. That counts. Dale paused. For what it's worth, I was wrong. About you not being man enough. About Lena settling. All of it. Why are you telling me this? Because watching you work the past 3 days, the way you handle problems, the way you and Lena move together, the way you don't need to prove anything, I realized something. I've been measuring strength wrong my whole life. Dale's voice was rough. You're stronger than me, Vale, just in ways I was too stupid to recognize. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Dale Mercer, the standard of Red Hollow masculinity, admitting he was wrong felt surreal. I appreciate that, Ethan said finally. But I'm not looking for your approval, or the town's, just trying to build a life that works for me and Lena. I know, that's what makes it real. Dale extended his hand. Thank you. For helping, for being bigger than I was. Ethan shook his hand and something old and bitter finally loosened in his chest. Not forgiveness, exactly. Dale's cruelty had cut deep. But release. Letting go of the need for Dale's approval or the satisfaction of revenge. It was freedom. Word of Ethan helping Dale spread through Red Hollow like wildfire. Opinions were split, as always. Some saw it as proof he was too soft to maintain proper boundaries. Others saw it differently, as evidence of character, integrity, the kind of strength that didn't need validation. Martha Brennan, predictably, fell into the first camp, helping the man who's insulted him for months, she said at the Sunday social, voice carrying. That's not strength. That's desperation for approval. But this time, not everyone agreed. Or it's decency, Sarah Cunningham said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Dale was cruel to Ethan, had every right to refuse help. But he showed up anyway. That takes real strength. It takes weakness, Martha insisted. A real man would have what? Sarah's voice was firmer now. Held a grudge? Let pride get in the way of doing the right thing? I'm tired of pretending that anger and violence are the only measures of masculinity. She looked around the room. Ethan Vale has been nothing but decent since the day I met him, and we've spent years mocking him for it. Maybe the problem isn't him. Maybe it's us. The silence that followed was profound. Martha tried to rally. That's naive. No, it's honest. This from Agnes Fletcher, needles clicking steadily. I've watched Ethan work his ranch for 15 years. Never complains, never asks for help, never causes trouble. And we've called him weak for it. Meanwhile, Dale starts fights, cheats at cards, and treats people terribly, and we call him strong. She looked at Martha. Maybe Sarah's right. Maybe we've been measuring wrong. The conversation shifted then, voices overlapping as people reconsidered assumptions they'd held for years. Not everyone. Some remained convinced Ethan was weak, that Lena had settled, that their marriage was doomed. But enough minds opened to create cracks in Red Hollow's rigid certainty. Change came slowly, but it came. Lena heard about Sarah's defense from multiple sources, each telling adding details. When Sarah stopped by the ranch the following week, Lena hugged her. Thank you, Lena said, for speaking up. I should have done it months ago. Sarah looked genuinely regretful. I knew they were wrong about Ethan, known it for years, but it was easier to go along than stand up. I'm sorry. You stood up when it mattered. Better late than never, I guess. Sarah paused. For what it's worth, you two are good together. Anyone with eyes can see that. And I'm glad you didn't listen to us. After Sarah left, Ethan came in from checking fences to find Lena smiling. What? The tide's turning,
People are starting to see what I've seen all along. Don't get your hopes up. This is Red Hollow. They'll find something new to criticize soon enough. Maybe, but at least some of them are questioning their assumptions. That's progress. He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. As long as you don't question yours, I don't care what they think. Never. Summer arrived with brutal heat and the endless work of growing season. They planted a garden together, Lena learning from Ethan's patient instruction, tended crops and livestock through long days that started before dawn and ended after sunset, fell into bed exhausted each night and woke tangled together each morning. The rhythm of it, the daily partnership, the shared purpose, the way they'd learned to move as a unit, settled into something deeper than love. It became home. Not the place, but the person. The knowing that whatever challenges came, they'd face them together. In late July, Martha Brennan's youngest son got into trouble, drunk and stupid. He'd gambled away money he didn't have and was facing serious consequences. The family was in crisis, and for once, Martha's certainty cracked. She showed up at Ethan and Lena's ranch on a Tuesday afternoon, looking older than her years. "I need advice," she said without preamble. Lena invited her in, serving coffee while Martha explained the situation. Her son owed money to dangerous people. Her husband wanted to pay the debt and let the boy off easy. Martha wanted consequences but didn't know how to enforce them without destroying her family. "What would you do?" Martha asked, looking at Ethan. He was quiet for a long moment. "I'd let him face the consequences. Not alone, support him through it, but don't shield him from the results of his choices. Otherwise, he never learns." That's harsh. That's honest. Protecting people from their mistakes doesn't help them grow. Just teaches them someone else will always clean up their messes. Martha's eyes filled with tears. "What if he hates me for it?" "He might. For a while." Ethan's voice was gentle. "But eventually he'll understand you loved him enough to let him fail. That's harder than bailing him out. Takes more strength." Martha looked at him like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. "You're not what I thought you were." "I know. I was wrong about you, about Lena, about your marriage." She wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry. For all of it. I appreciate that. Do you forgive me?" Ethan considered the question seriously. "I'm working on it. Ask me again in a few months." The honesty seemed to mean more than automatic forgiveness would have. Martha nodded, finished her coffee, and left with a plan to help her son face his consequences. After she was gone, Lena turned to Ethan. "That was big of you, giving her advice after everything." "She needed help. I had it. Pretty simple." "Not simple at all. You could have refused, held a grudge." "Could have. But what's the point?" He looked at her. "I spent 12 years letting this town's opinion define me, measuring myself against their standards, believing their judgment mattered more than my own." He took her hand. "You taught me that was wrong, that the only measure that matters is whether I'm being honest with myself and the people I love. Martha's opinion doesn't change who I am. Neither does her apology, but I can still help her because it's the right thing to do." Lena felt pride swell in her chest. "When did you get so wise?" "I married well." "Damn right you did." They laughed, and Lena realized something had fundamentally shifted. Ethan wasn't seeking approval anymore, from the town, from Dale, from anyone. He'd found something more valuable, certainty in himself, in who he was and what he valued. It made him different, steadier, more present. It made him strong in exactly the way he'd always been, but now he believed it too. Fall brought harvest and the satisfaction of seeing their hard work pay off. The crops were good, not spectacular, but solid. The livestock were healthy. The ranch was profitable enough to cover expenses and put some aside. They were building something sustainable, and it showed in everything from the repaired fences to the full pantry. When they rode into town for the Harvest Festival in October, the reception was noticeably different. People greeted them without obvious judgment. Dale nodded respectfully. Sarah hugged Lena and invited them to dinner. Even Martha managed a genuine smile. The town hadn't completely changed. There were still whispers, still people who thought Ethan was weak and Lena had settled. But the narrative was no longer unanimous. Enough people had reconsidered their assumptions to create space for a different story. The story of a quiet man who'd been strong all along, and the woman who'd seen it when no one else bothered to look. At the festival, Lena watched Ethan talk with Tommy Chen about ranch work, offering advice without condescension. Watched him help Mrs. Chen carry supplies to her wagon without being asked. Watched him exist in his community with the easy confidence of someone who'd stopped apologizing for who he was. Dale Mercer approached them near the end of the evening. Vale. Lena. He looked uncomfortable but determined. I wanted to say something publicly that I've only said private. I was wrong about you both, said some terrible things, made your lives harder than they needed to be. He looked around at the crowd that had quieted to listen. Ethan's a better man than I am, and their marriage is stronger than most of ours. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. The crowd murmured, surprised. Dale Mercer, admitting he was wrong, wasn't something anyone expected. Ethan extended his hand. Takes courage to say that. Thank you. They shook, and Lena saw tears in more than one person's eyes. Not because it was a dramatic moment, it was too simple for drama, but because it represented something rare. Genuine change. Honest reconsideration of long-held beliefs. Growth. As they drove home that night, stars bright overhead and the air cool with coming winter, Lena felt something settle in her chest that had been restless for years. Peace. Not the absence of challenge. Life would always bring those. But the certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, with exactly who she was supposed to be with. You're quiet, Ethan said, just thinking. About? About how a year ago I came back to Red Hollow convinced I was a failure. Convinced I'd ruined my life and there was no recovering from it. She looked at him. I thought this was rock bottom, the last place I'd ever want to be. And now? Now I think it might be the best thing that ever happened to me, because it brought me to you. Ethan's hand found hers. I spent 12 years thinking I'd always be alone, that no one would ever see past the town's judgment to who I actually was. Then you showed up and just saw me, right from the start. Because you were worth seeing. We were both worth seeing. Just took finding each other to believe it. They rode in comfortable silence, hands linked. And Lena thought about all the moments that had led here. The failed business, the betrayal, the desperate flight back to Red Hollow, the dance that started everything, the wedding the whole town predicted would fail. Every painful moment had been necessary to bring them to this place. Winter came again, their second as a married couple. This time they faced it with the confidence of experience and the security of genuine partnership. When storms hit, they worked together seamlessly. When supplies ran low, they made do without panic. When the town's old guard occasionally reverted to their original judgments, they ignored it with the ease of people who'd stopped caring about external validation. They were building a life, not perfect, never perfect, but real and honest, and theirs. One February morning, Lena woke feeling ill. It took 3 days of symptoms before the possibility occurred to her. Another week before she worked up the courage to confirm it. She was pregnant. The news terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She told Ethan that evening, watching his face cycle through shock, fear, and something that might have been joy. You're sure? He asked. Pretty sure. We're having a baby. Looks that way? He sat down heavily. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know how to be a mother. We'll figure it out. What if I'm terrible at it? What if you're not? She sat beside him. Ethan, you're patient, kind, and honest. You show up every day without fail. You listen, you care. That's what kids need. What if they inherit the town's opinion of me? Think their father is weak? Then we teach them differently. Show them that strength comes in many forms. That integrity matters more than performance. That being real is better than being loud. She took his hand. We raise them the way we live, honestly, imperfectly, doing our best. He pulled her close, and she felt him trembling slightly. I'm terrified. Me too. But you think we can do this? I think we can try. That's all anyone can do. They sat together in the gathering darkness, holding each other, and the news that would change everything. And Lena felt the same certainty she'd felt on their wedding day. They were jumping off a cliff again. But they were jumping together, and somehow that made it possible. The pregnancy was not easy. Lena was sick for months, exhausted beyond reason, struggling to keep up with ranch work. Ethan took on more, never complaining, just quietly handling what needed doing. When she felt guilty about not pulling her weight, he'd kiss her forehead and remind her she was building a human, which was plenty of work. The town rallied in ways that surprised them both. Sarah brought meals. Agnes offered hand-knit baby clothes. Even Martha stopped by with advice and genuine warmth. The community that had spent so long judging them now wrapped around them with unexpected support. "People are strange," Lena said one afternoon, surrounded by gifts from neighbors. "They just needed time," Ethan said. "We challenged everything they believed. Can't blame them for resisting at first." "I can absolutely blame them." "Fair," he smiled. "But they came around eventually. That counts for something." The baby came in early October, a boy with Ethan's eyes and Lena's stubborn chin. They named him William, after Lena's father, and brought him home to the ranch that had become their foundation. Those first weeks were brutal. Sleepless nights, constant worry, the overwhelming responsibility of keeping a tiny human alive. But they faced it together, learning as they went, making mistakes and correcting them, asking for help when needed. And somewhere in the exhaustion and chaos, Lena looked at Ethan holding their son, so gentle, so careful, so present, and felt everything click into place. This man the town had dismissed as too weak to be a husband was the best father she could imagine for their child. Not because he performed strength or demanded respect, but because he led with patience, listened before acting, and chose care over pride every single time. The strength Red Hollow had failed to recognize was exactly the strength their son would need. One evening, when William was 3 months old, Lena found Ethan on the porch, rocking the baby and singing softly. The same off-key songs he sang to the horses, but quieter, gentler. She sat beside him, not interrupting. "You know what I realized?" Ethan said after a moment. "What?" "For 12 years I measured myself against the wrong standard. Tried to be what Red Hollow wanted, what Dale embodied, what everyone said a man should be." He looked at their son. "But watching you fight for us, watching how people actually changed when we just lived honestly, I learned something." "What's that?" "That real strength isn't about dominating or performing or proving anything. It's about showing up, being consistent, choosing integrity even when it costs you." He met her eyes. "It's about being so certain of who you are that other people's opinions become background noise." "When did you figure that out?" "Gradually. Mostly because you kept believing it until I could believe it too." He paused. "Thank you for seeing me when no one else bothered, for fighting when I was too tired, for choosing me when everyone said you shouldn't." Lena felt tears sting her eyes. "Thank you for being worth choosing, for proving that quiet strength is real, for teaching me that honesty matters more than performance." They sat together on the porch, their baby between them, and watched the sun set over the land they'd built together. Red Hollow was quiet in the distance, the town that had tried so hard to define them and failed. Because they'd defined themselves instead, not as victims of judgment or products of expectation, but as partners who'd chosen each other honestly and built something real from that choice. Ethan had learned he didn't need to be loud to be strong. Lena had learned that failure could redirect you towards something better than the life you'd planned. Together, they'd learned that the opinions that mattered were the ones they held about themselves and each other. Red Hollow had eventually come around, some of them, anyway. Recognized that there were different ways to be strong, different ways to build a life, different ways to measure worth. But even if they hadn't, it wouldn't have changed anything. Because Ethan and Lena had stopped seeking validation from people who'd proven they couldn't see clearly. They'd found it in each other instead. And that, more than any town's approval, more than any performance of strength, more than any perfect outcome, was enough. Years later, when William was old enough to ask questions, he'd want to know how his parents met. Lena would tell him about coming home broken and finding someone whole in his honesty. Ethan would tell him about learning that being seen was better than being approved of. And together, they'd teach him what Red Hollow had taken 12 years to understand. That strength doesn't announce itself. It just shows up day after day, honest and steady and real. That being gentle isn't weakness. It's choosing care over cruelty, patience over pride, integrity over performance. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is be exactly who you are, without apology or pretense, regardless of who's watching. That love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone real and choosing them anyway, flaws, fears, damage, and all. And that sometimes the worst things that happen to you, the failures, the betrayals, the moments that feel like rock bottom, are exactly what you need to find the life you were actually meant to live.
Lena had come back to Red Hollow thinking it was the end. It had been a beginning instead. The beginning of understanding that worth doesn't need validation, that strength comes in many forms, that choosing honesty over performance, patience over pride, and partnership over independence could build something more solid than any facade. The beginning of a life that wasn't perfect or smooth or anything like she'd imagined. But it was real. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. The sun set over their ranch, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold. William dozed in his father's arms. Lena leaned against Ethan's shoulder. The wind carried the smell of coming rain and fresh earth. Somewhere in the distance, Red Hollow went about its business, gossiping, judging, living according to its rules. But here, on this porch, in this moment, none of that touched them. They'd built something the town couldn't reach, something honest and imperfect and entirely their own. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.